Testing. Welcome everyone to the San Rafael regular City Council meeting for Monday, November 1st. I will ask the City Clerk to call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Present.
Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Yeren-Scolati.
Present.
Mayor Kate.
Present. All 5 of us are here. Thank you. We met in a closed session prior, and I'll ask the City Attorney to report out, please. Wait, you're mute. Try again.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The City Council took reportable action in closed session this evening with respect to the case of Casey Arnold Ince versus City of San Rafael. The council voted to approve a settlement in that matter, where in exchange for the city's payment of $75,000, the plaintiff will provide a dismissal with prejudice and complete release of all claims with a waiver of Civil Code Section 1542. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So for those tuning in for the first time, you'll see lots of faces on the call, and that is our staff that work so hard every single day to keep our city running beautifully. I know there'll be a report out later of what that looked like during the storm. I think Quinn will make a few comments about that. So thank you all for everything that you do. So November is Native American Heritage Month, and for the past year, we've been including this following land acknowledgement as part of the mayor remarks, which is, we honor the original indigenous people who have lived and are living in San Rafael. This city is traditionally home to the Coast Miwok people, and we thank the original caretakers of this land and honor their continuing involvement in stewardship practices that benefit us all. So we include this land acknowledgement to show respect and honoring the indigenous people of San Rafael. It is a simple yet powerful way to acknowledge indigenous histories and remind us to work together towards honoring the truth. At our next meeting, we're going to have a more formal proclamation. We often have proclamations that will be ready in mid-November. But in the meantime, there's this great website where you can learn more. It's www.nativeamericanheritagemonth.gov. I'll ask the city clerk to put that link in the chat. And I clicked around on it today. There's some great resources there. So with that, let's get right to our meeting, and I will ask the city clerk to share with the public how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. At this time, I would like to ask staff to turn off their cameras. Thank you. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube, and viewers can provide comments by telephone by calling 669-900-9128 and use the meeting ID 817-3692-0337, or they can comment and watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda. If you're commenting over the telephone, please press *9 when Mayor Kate opens the public comment period. Once you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. If you're commenting through Zoom, please use the raise hand button to let us know you'd like to speak and wait until you've been unmuted. If you experience any technical difficulties throughout the meeting, you can email city.clerk@cityofsanrafael.org. Closed captioning is available for this meeting, and the link is published to YouTube, and it's included in the Zoom chat now. Thank you. Oh, you're muted.
There's going to be a whole meeting without doing that. So thank you, City Clerk. So the first item on our agenda is open time for public expression, as just described by the City Clerk. So this is anything not on our agenda for the evening. Is there anyone who'd like to comment at this time?
And I will. I do see a hand raised, so I'll request the public comment timer. And the only thing I'll add for my comments earlier is that you will have 2 minutes to provide public comments, and you will be muted once time has elapsed. And I don't see our public comments, but I'll bring it up. Oh, there's a Zoom stuck problem. Okay. Here we go. And I'll hold up my phone at 10 seconds when there's 10 seconds remaining on my clock.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Ava Crisanti, and it is now November, and we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of the death of Bridget Tusher under a freeway overpass in Marin County. Ms. Tusher was unhoused, and she was denied a room key room, as far as I can tell, from the CPRA correspondence. I've repeatedly requested information from Mayor Kate Collin regarding correspondence I found in the CPRA, where she discusses denying so few as 5 room key rooms for unhoused individuals in San Rafael, which was where Bridget had been staying prior to her death. Your staffer, your police department staffer, Lynn Murphy, lied about her death. She did not provide the accurate cause of death. The accurate cause of death was a lack of insulin. That was the primary cause of death. Her toxicology report was perfectly clean. And your staffer was permitted to lie in the Marin Independent Journal about this. Her lie is contradicted by the actual coroner's report, which I took the time to request and read through. Much of it is redacted, but much of it raises questions about both police activity and with regard to my broader CPRA requests and the correspondence from the City of San Rafael, many questions about the dysfunction of your homeless services team. I note that there was flooding underneath the freeway overpass where Lynn Murphy, I find it astounding that she's still employed by the City of San Rafael after what we discovered in the CPRA correspondence. But she made no effort in the.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on an item not on our agenda?
We do have another hand raised.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Kate Collins and all the council members. I just want to upfront about this. I do some research on the Eva who just spoke, and she doesn't live in Marin County, and she lives in Berkeley, and she has been creating quite a bit of a havoc on the Marin County supervisors meetings and all the cities in Marin County's council meetings. It's not only San Rafael, it's everywhere in Marin County. She has some agenda to solve, which is not our problem. Personally, I talked to some people and under the Viaduct 101. They don't know her. Just let's end there. I have other issues that I want to bring it up today. Is that I have seen a woman who was weaving in and out of the half a block from the under the Viaduct encampment. On Wednesday, 3:40 p.m., I was driving with my family going northbound 101, and she was weaving in and out of the traffic lane. I was just so concerned because I was worried about she was being hit by a car. I was on hold on San Rafael Police Department non-urgent number for 4 minutes. I hung up and called 911, and they dispatched me again back to San Rafael Police Department non-urgent number. Again, put on hold 4.5 minutes, talk to a dispatcher. I hope this can be solved. Either, I don't know what could be done, but we need to make sure that even though it's not urgent number, but it needs to be addressed to less than 1 minute, if it's possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, and we'll make sure that that feedback regarding response times to 911 gets back to Chief Spiller. And that is just a reminder to the public, if you're not sure, do call 911. We always want you doing that, and then they can sort out where the call should go.
So I see no other hands raised, but I'll give everyone a few more seconds and just remind anyone calling in to press *9. And if you're on Zoom, use the raise hand button. I see no further public comment.
Okay, I will close the public comment and bring it back for the city manager's report. And there he is, City Manager Schutz. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kate and City Council. I have a couple brief announcements about important events this week, and then I'm going to ask Emergency Services Manager Quinn Gardner to say a few words as well about the storm that you referenced. This week we have coming up on Thursday, November 4th, starting at 6:30 p.m., a town hall meeting on our new housing element, or the creation of our new housing element. It hasn't been created yet. Describes the city's plans to meet the housing needs of the current and future residents in San Rafael. And the state requires all cities and counties in the Bay Area to update their housing elements by the end of 2020. So it's our opportunity to do so and to build a plan along with our community as to how San Rafael can provide our share of housing units. The town hall this week is going to be an opportunity to find out more about the project, what the requirements from the state are, and then for our community members to share their views on housing in San Rafael. And we will be offering Spanish interpretation as well. So I'll ask the city clerk to put the link in the chat if anyone would like to find out more information about that upcoming meeting this week. But another easy way to find it is on our homepage, cityofsanrafael.org. It's listed under upcoming events, one of the first items there, as under the title, Let's House San Rafael. Also this week on Saturday, November 6th, will be the Day of the Dead event at the Alboro Community Center with the traditional food and entertainment and walking procession through the neighborhood. The program starts at 3, and the workshops and music and the walking procession start at 6, followed by more cultural performances and dance. So masks are required for everyone, and this one has an easier URL. It's dayofthedeadsr.org, dayofthedeadsr for sanrafael.org. And then lastly, as a segue to Quinn, I wanted to mention that the Caltrans bridge replacement project at the Central San Rafael northbound US 101 off-ramp continues to be ongoing. The off-ramp was closed from 9 p.m. this past Saturday until noon yesterday. This was an additional period of time because they had planned a 55-hour closure the prior weekend, and they had to reduce that work due to the severe storm that we had. This weekend, the San Rafael Police Department reported no issues with this weekend's closure. Our Department of Public Works reported this morning that this weekend was a success for Caltrans, and the off-ramp has been reconfigured to 3 lanes, which is welcome. It's the second in Irwin because it had been 2 for quite some time. So this will help with the queuing on the freeway and make room for the next phases of Caltrans work at this area. The storm the prior Sunday that cut short Caltrans plans for the 55-hour closure was the one that the Marin IJ called a historic deluge, and the second rainiest day documented in Marin. And meteorologists called a bomb cyclone and an atmospheric river. I had not been familiar with the term bomb cyclone before last Sunday. So we are clearly seeing some very unusual weather events, from historic drought to then historic rains in Marin and historic wildfires in the Bay Area and the rest of California. So I've asked the city's emergency manager, Quinn Gardner, to say a few words about the severe storm, the city's response, and what we can all do to prepare for more of these kinds of weather events, which unfortunately we're anticipating. So I'll turn it over to you, Quinn.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, Council. I think Jim's summary of one of the reasons this was a unique and significant event, and all those various terms associated with it in the records. Certainly just the sheer amount of rain made this unique. However, just the time of year also made it a little bit different. Because it was earlier in the year, a lot of our winter storm cleanup is usually scheduled right about now. And so that created a little bit of extra issue, as well as how full of leaves the trees are. And so that sounds a little bit weird, but what happens is all the winds, because we had so much significant winds, the trees basically become sails. So we saw a lot more tree damage than we might have had all the leaves been off, just because it creates that additional tension essentially. And challenging, a lot of leaves fell during the storm, which then gets into the drain systems and creates additional challenges there. So on that note, in terms of how the city responded, I can't give the amount of people that were out in the rain for 12 plus hours was really incredible. And our public works staff worked an incredibly long day, as did our police and fire. But public works, especially, literally in drains, pulling out that material, trying to keep up with the falling debris, as well as the water. So Spent a lot of time clearing systems even before the heavy rain started, trying to get prepared. You also saw some emergency alerts go out via Nixle and Alert Marin. If anybody watching didn't get those alerts, my usual pitch, please make sure you're signed up for emergency alerts in Nixle and Alert Marin. The county's emergency portal was also active. So this is maybe the second or third time that's kind of been used on an active event. So encourage folks to check that out, had some mapping information, links to sandbags, things like that. So it's a great resource. A lot of this really turned into a traffic control issue because we were seeing roads flooded as well as traffic signals out because of the power. So police and traffic particularly did a great job trying to block intersections, keep folks out of those intersections. But we do always need to remind people if a light's out, it becomes a four-way intersection. And unfortunately, of course, we saw a few vehicle accidents because of that, but please drive cautiously in those environments. All of our first responders and public works were responding to a lot of calls for service, power lines, trees down, etc. We also did have some water rescues because folks drove through floodwater that they shouldn't have driven through and stalled out vehicles, and our engines had to go in and rescue those folks and then tow the vehicles later. So please don't drive through floodwater. And I think one of the things I really want to call out as well is we've done an internal city debrief. And one of the things I kept hearing over and over during that debrief was this thing wasn't going quite right at the beginning, but we adjusted and we made it better during the incident. And I think that speaks wonders to the team we have. And a lot of those changes are institutionalized now. Just a few days later, we've put together some documentation, but just a great job of taking that and creatively problem solving as the situation went on. So looking ahead and kind of what's next, we did see a last minute run on sandbags, not super surprising when that material was out and during a period of time where we didn't want people on the road. So if you saw flood or you saw some flooding today and you need sandbags, we do have 3 locations behind City Hall in the Menzies parking lot, Station 55 and Terra Linda. I think we try to limit that to about 10, but if you need to get some, please go ahead and get some. You can also help us out as residents by keeping the drains in front of your house clear. If you see debris kind of building up and you can rake that easily and put it into your green cart, that helps a lot and just provides some of that extra relief. And I think one of the biggest things for us is we saw a lot of people on the road, and particularly because this was one of our first significant rainfalls, we see that oil and we got a lot of vehicle accidents because of that. So please stay home if the weather is really bad. Try to do what you can to prepare. And this is going to sound very odd on a day that's also raining, but we are still in drought conditions. As of 3 days ago, we were on tier 4 of 5 of the drought worst conditions. So maybe today we got a little bit better, but please continue your water conservation efforts because we are still in drought conditions. I do hope this marks the end of fire season. I know Santa Rosa, I think, declared the end of fire season. We'll see what the next couple of days here in Marin bring. Just want to thank, again, the crews working through the rain. We did partially activate our emergency operations center. So myself and some other folks, but we were in our brand new public safety center being able to coordinate, but personally, I was quite dry and safe, and just want to, I can't thank the folks out there running those calls enough. So I think that concludes my quick report, unless there's any questions.
Thanks, Quinn. I'll just finish up by saying that Quinn's also running an earthquake scenario for city staff tomorrow. So we're always trying to learn and improve and try to plan in advance for all kinds of emergencies. And I appreciate what Quinn said about debriefing after every event and seeing what we can learn from it. And also just want to add my thanks to Quinn for this report, and also everyone that was acting as first responders and out in the rain and trying to deal with everything that was going on during that severe storm. So that concludes the city manager's report. And unless there's any questions for Quinn or me, I'll send it back to you, Mayor Kate.
I don't see any questions, so I will extend my thanks to Quinn and the team as well. I have to say that Senator McGuire called in to check on us, as well as Supervisor Damon Connolly. And I said, I'm doing my part. I'm staying out of the way and letting the professionals do what they need to do, staying off the roads. And DPW was very busy, as were our first responders. So once again, it just shows San Rafael knows how to show up in both good times and in those more treacherous times. So thank you for all of that. And thank you, Quinn, for coming on and giving that update to us. Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor Kay. We did have comment on the reports provided, one or the other. And since they are an agenda item, the public is entitled to comment if they so wish. So wanting that's your attention. I think City Clerk has somebody on the line.
Okay.
Yes, and if I may request our public timer, if possible. Thank you. I do see one hand raised. Ava, are you there? I'm gonna give her about 5 seconds.
I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the next agenda item.
Thank you.
So are there any comments on this item then? The city manager report?
I see no other hand raised.
Okay, thank you. I'll close it. Come back to, so thank you, City Manager Schutz. Thank you, Quinn, very much. Okay, council member reports. I don't know about you, but I have quite a list. So I will start with the vice mayor and we'll go through. So.
Okay, I have a fairly short list. I participated last week in convening the initial meeting of the MC Water Committee. Councilmember Eli Hill joined me in that meeting with several, but not all, of the representatives of the other cities in San Rafael. We're starting our review of the county's response to the ongoing drought, as Gwen has so correctly pointed out. I also today did the thing I enjoy the most about being an elected member of the City Council. I spoke to the 3rd grade advocacy class at Glenwood Elementary today. It was great because I was able to use our recent approval of the renovations of Fire Station 55 as an example of what the City Council does. And they were very surprised when I told them that renovation began with Measure E, which we adopted in 2013, which was the year most of them were born. So that kind of put it into context, that it took all of their lifetime to get to renovating that fire station, among other things. But I return tomorrow to speak to the other half of the class. So that's my report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Hill.
Well, similarly, I did attend the meeting that Vice Mayor Bushy just cited. I will say, and she didn't say that, she did preside and provided very clear guidance as we are forming the team. Not everyone was there, but I really appreciated Vice Mayor Bushy's guidance and bring her deep experience and ability to wrangle ideas. So thank you very much, Vice Mayor, for the kickoff to that meeting. I similarly will be meeting at Glenwood with students. Children for Change is the name of the nonprofit that is connecting City Council members with the students. My opportunity will be coming up this Thursday. So it's really such a wonderful opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Thank you for making that time. Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you. I just want to highlight that the Marin County will be holding the point in time account for the homeless again this year. It's not going to be the full what's happening with 2019. It's going to be more than what we did last year under strict COVID considerations, but also for 2021, it's going to be, or 21, 22, it will be more, still somewhat of a COVID constrained count, but there'll be more of a count. The goal is to have a better baseline using at least the data from last year. So more to come about that. We're just kicking off those meetings, but welcome input and thoughts around the count. Meetings around the United Against Hate Week, which we're going to hear more about shortly. So I won't say too much about that, but thanks to everyone for all the work around that. MWPA, this is interesting. We've been having meetings and meetings talking about fire and drought and the threat of fire, and then it's raining, and now it's like there's still a high level of attention. If the rain continues, great. If it doesn't continue, we're in a worse situation with wildfire because we'll have the water will now have had spurred more growth. So we need to wait and see, and the work is continuing in that area. And I will be at Vallecito School on Saturday doing a cleanup with families and kids there. That's about it.
Thank you. Councilmember Micah.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mayor Kate. The last, I have attended several meetings around climate change and especially around electrifying buildings and vehicles. So I participated in the board retreat and annual review for MCE. I was very happy as they were touching on the opportunities to advance racial equity in MCE communities. And I'm excited to be working with them and see how we can bring some of those EV chargers to the canal. So there is a little bit of funding. So I'll be working with them on that. There's also the Climate Action Plan Quarterly Forum. It happened this month. So again, thank you, Cory Bitov, for helping lead these quarterly forums. There was a great presentations from the students and MCEL, which is part of the Terra Linda High School. And also there were 4 presenters around building decarbonization, tools and opportunities at hand. And also, I participated in the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members, MCCMC, for Climate Action Committee. And again, it was a lot of resources around electrification retrofits for new buildings, for existing buildings, for ADUs, and with the hope that maybe there will be some regulation that will start at the county level that then we can bring to our cities, but they are a little bit like unified. So we don't drive the developers crazy with all these different codes. But I think we are doing well in San Rafael. There is more to do, but that's always great to see. I also attended the Canal Collaborative Zoom meeting with Mayor Kate and the county and some of our great CBOs that they participate on that, trying to support our canal residents. And finally, I was invited to the East San Rafael office hours with the supervisor, Dennis Rodoni. So I was able to provide a little update on what's happening with the City of San Rafael. And my last comment is just around the rain. It was pretty hard in our neighborhood in Bret Harte, lost some fences and some flooding. We lost power. So I'm so thankful for the police department, fire department, public works, and PG&E because I could hear the sirens going, and it was amazing. So I know that we already talked about this, but I just wanted to reinforce that I feel very grateful to be in the City of San Rafael with our departments. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. We always have time for additional accolades for sure. So, okay, running down on these meetings. So I am the San Rafael representative for the Transportation Authority of Marin, also known as TAM. At our meeting last week, we had a congestion management program. They are our designated congestion management agency, and they have to do a report out to the Marin Transportation Commission, MTC, every 2 years. It was actually fascinating. You can go on the TAM website and look at the slides. Really just updating what has been done around congestion management. And there were year-end financials. Being that we're in November, a lot of these big agencies have year-end financial reports that they are putting forward for approval. Also, as part of TAM, I'm on the Safe Routes to School Ad Hoc Committee. So it's a smaller group, a subset of the TAM board, and we got an update on just safe routes to school. How did they manage the pandemic? How did they have to pivot knowing that kids weren't in school the year previously? They're increasing participation now and getting momentum since COVID, getting it back going, getting kids used to being on their bikes or to walking. In addition, we talked about the Street Smart campaign. You might have seen, I think we had them this year, these signs that say like, slow down, kids at schools in session. That's part of Street Smart. How do we continue to get the word out so as drivers slow down when the students are out? And finally, we had an update on the crossing guard. We need to hire more. There are never enough of them. Right now, there are 102 guards, which I don't know, it seems like a lot in some ways, but you think of all the intersections, the school crossing guards in all of Marin, and they're still trying to hire additional ones. So always good momentum around safe routes to school, and I will keep you posted. Staying in the transit theme, Marin Transit, we had our morning meeting, year-end financial and performance report were both presented and approved today. We also had a discussion about the procurement process. What does it look like when an agency is going through and setting up the contracts? Marin Transit is a 100% contract agency, so what does that look like? Smart. Wow, there is a whole transit theme here. So last week we welcomed our new general manager, Eddie Cummins. He is so well qualified, has amazing background and expertise, and I know he'll do great things in following in Farhad's footsteps in the days to come. And on the SMART path, or I would do a SMART, I was invited by the Marin County Bike Coalition, MCBC, to bike the SMART path from Larkspur all the way up to Novato, and adding on the miles from my house, it was 27 miles of riding. No, it was great. I was a little tired the next day. No, it was great. But it was really, it's always eye-opening to actually bike the path and to see where the gaps are and where we are doing, the collective doing things well and where we can have improvement. So that was fantastic. Eric Lucan attended as well. He's also on the SMART and TAM board and part of Novato City Council. And I'll close with Baywave. That is the county-led group where different jurisdictions come together and talk about what's being done around sea level rise and climate adaptation. We had a fantastic presentation by Sausalito. We're going to totally share or steal some of their ideas. Sausalito did an incredible program engaging community around sea level rise. And they did it through using GIS as a way to highlight infrastructure, and you could see where the vulnerable parts are. Really, really well done in terms of engaging the community and figuring out a way forward. So Corey was a part of that meeting, and I'm sure we'll bring some of that for our own East San Rafael neighborhood to figure out how can we build on what they've already done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So with that, thank you as always for all the work that you do outside of these moments when we're on the virtual dais. I know that you're out there, and it's nice the community gets to hear what you're up to. Okay.
Mayor Kate, we do have a hand raised for public comment. I just want to make sure that it's not on any of the city council member reports. If I could request the public timer.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Terrific.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to add on to Mayor Kate Collins' comments. This is Ava Crisanti. I am a cycle commuter. I've been 39 years long distance cyclist. Grew up in Marin, did all my cycling, second generation bike commuter. And I still use all of the bike paths from all the way from the East Bay. You know, normally about 50-mile round trip commute every other day to Marin, where I'm still doing most of my research and activism. So I do want to point out that you have some serious gaps in San Rafael, and I'm glad you're working on them, but they're important. I also want to point out that I think given the problems that you're having with the camp, it should be part of the administrator's report every city council meeting to have a public health update. With the flooding, you're increasing your risk of a Shigella outbreak, which we saw recently in San Diego. And this could really have been mitigated. The public health risks in general could have been mitigated if more care had been taken with that camp, but keeping that number of people living underneath a freeway overpass is not, it's not humane. And it's in violation of all sorts of rules. It's also a major liability in terms of lawsuits for the city of San Rafael. And whether you've reckoned with that or not, what we're seeing is that this is turning out to be extremely costly for cities. So, you know, pretending that it's not a problem and that you don't need to do better and that you don't need to get a move on getting people into proper housing or finding something in the meantime that is better than that is going to cost you probably considerably. Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, but I'll give everyone a few seconds. If you're calling in to comment, and right now we're on the city council member reports, you can press *9. I do see another hand raised.
This is Sunny Lee again. I'm gonna just comment one more thing about Eva Chrysanthemum, that she does quite a bit of activism, she said, commuting from Berkeley. I want her to focus on her activism in El Cerrito, Berkeley, Albany, or other East Bay cities, we don't have energy, even time to devote in this busy agenda, full of agenda council meeting, even consider. I'm sorry, we have a full plate in this city to take care of so many things. We cannot just always publicly getting into the chaos some folks like to create, it seems like.
Thank
So
you,
I just,
Attorney.
yeah.
So this is on the council member reports. So if you have
Yes.
anything you'd like to.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry about that. But I just want to put my two words. That's all. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Any other comments on the council member reports?
I see no other hands raised. I'm just going to give everyone a couple seconds. I see no further public comment.
Okay, we'll close the public comment on that agenda item and bring it to the consent calendar. Do any of my colleagues like to hold any of the items from the consent calendar? Okay, not seen. I will open public comment.
Thank you. So to comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. And if you are calling in, please press *9 to unmute yourself. And again, this is for any items on the consent calendar. And after 2 minutes has passed, I will be muting. Thank you. I see no hands raised as of right now. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment and request a motion on the consent calendar.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
Second.
And moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadam-Scolati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So we have several special presentations tonight. The first one is a proclamation supporting United Against Hate Week. And I'm not sure who might be coming on to receive that. I think Thomas Wong is. So let me start. I know Councilmember Kurtz will also have some comments, and she referred to it. But let me go ahead and read the proclamation. And it'll be followed up, I think, by a video, right? So we'll have some. Okay. So United Against Hate Week 2021 and support for Not in Our Town. Whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strength comes from its diversity, and it has become all too common to see, hear, and witness racist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, and other hateful acts in this country. And whereas the Constitution enshrines equality for all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political views. And whereas the City of San Rafael is committed to addressing equality and inclusivity in housing, criminal justice, healthcare, employment, education, and all other aspects of our community. And whereas education, compassion, and cooperation are vital to understanding and embracing the differences between people. And we seek to join other communities across the country in bridging divisions and strengthening communities. And whereas the City of San Rafael wishes to go further and support Not in Our Town. It is a leading anti-hate organization that serves hundreds of schools and communities across the country who stand against all forms of prejudice and work to build bridges to foster inclusion and equity. And together, our community can stand united against hate, not just this week, but every day. Now, therefore, I, Kate Cullen, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim November 14th through November 20th as United Against Hate Week in the City of San Rafael, and we pledge the city's full support of the San Rafael chapter of Not in Our Town. So with that lead up, I will turn it to Thomas, who I guess then will turn it to Councilmember Kurtz. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kate and council members. I am proud to accept this proclamation on behalf of all of our community members, including our students, residents, businesses, and city employees. The City of San Rafael and our community is committed to United Against Hate and the efforts of Not in Our Town. To that end, the city will be spreading awareness by installing San Rafael Stands United Against Hate banners across 4th Street, hand out posters to our local businesses in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, partner with the San Rafael Chamber to have local businesses share the city's social media campaign, and work with the San Rafael Library to hold a book group event on the book All-American Voice. If you're interested in showing your support in joining the city, download and print your poster at unitedagainsthateweek.org. And to learn more about the San Rafael Library and All-American Boy, visit srpubliclibrary.org. Every day, each of us have the opportunity to show our support for this cause through our actions. Join us in over 200 communities across the United States and do your part in standing united against hate. I would now like to share a short video produced by the city with special thanks to Walter Gonzalez, who helped produce it. The video will be followed by a few words from Councilmember Kurtz, so please enjoy.
San Rafael stands united against hate. As Mayor of San Rafael, I urge you to add your voice to the growing chorus that hate has no place in our cities, our communities, our neighborhoods, or our homes. We stand together so that together we'll focus on what we all have in common and not our differences. Let's take the time to build bridges, create connection points, and engage with each other so that we will see each other as the humans we are. When we do that, hate doesn't have a chance.
Hi, I'm Dave Spiller, Police Chief here in the City of San Rafael. In our city, we stand united against hate. When we come together, we can right injustices. Together, we can practice tolerance, and we can appreciate how interconnected we all really are. Stand against racism. Stand against bigotry. Stand against homophobia. Together, we can make an impact. Together, we can make real positive changes in our world. In San Rafael, we stand united against hate.
My name is Rachel Kurtz, and I'm a council member for the City of San Rafael. I stand united against hate because growing up as one of the only Jewish kids in school, I was made to feel different. I was the example, I was the teacher, and I was also called a sinner. I know what it feels like to be treated differently because of my religion or just because I wore my Star of David necklace. Our community will not tolerate hate of any kind. Acts of hate and implicit bias are a dangerous threat to the safety of those in our neighborhoods and community. The City of San Rafael stands united against hate.
My name is Mary Beth Bushy. I'm a proud resident of San Rafael, elected to San Rafael City Council, this year serving as the Vice Mayor of San Rafael. I stand against hate in San Rafael because San Rafael is better than that. San Rafael is stronger for all of our differences, and the differences amongst our residents we value because that brings different light to San Rafael and different possibilities for our future and our present. I stand against hate in all forms in San Rafael, and I hope that you do too. Thank you.
Hola, my name is Maika Llorens Gulari, and I'm a council member for the City of San Rafael, representing District 1. And I am standing against any form of hate because we are all unique. We are all very different. And that's exactly what makes our diverse community an amazing and beautiful place to live and to work. Let's welcome everybody in our communities. Let's make sure that everybody feels at home. Today, I stand together against any forms of hate, and I invite you to do the same.
I'm Eli Hill. I'm a city council member in the City of San Rafael, California, and a Chinese American. Let us acknowledge that hate in any form is unacceptable, whether it's physical violence, speech, or otherwise. The impacts to those who experience hate are deep and traumatic. I stand united against hate and racism in any form. We should continue to implement preventative measures and implement policies that reinforce human rights and civil rights protections. Join me in standing united against hate.
support me in uniting against hate.
Wow. That was really amazing. That was the first time I saw the video. Thank you to Thomas. Thank you to the whole team. This really is amazing, and it's been a lot of work. I know Walter Gonzalez, who is our intern, I believe put that video together and just did a really amazing job. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who participated in all those pictures. And even though we call it United Against Hate Week, it's really a week of a time for us to really think about the work that we do. It's a day, it's a moment, it's the hour, it's the month, but we call it the week because it means we need to pause and really think about what's working and what's not working. So this took a whole effort, and it's going to continue. Because there is no room for hate. There's no room for racism and no room for vandalism. We are a city that stands for dignity, respect, and civility. I would also like to mention the county supervisors have also included a United Against Hate Week resolution on tomorrow's agenda. So if you'd like to hear their update, they're going to be presenting it as well. We have to continue to counter hate crimes, call out discrimination and marginalization, and start to listen to one another and share our stories. Way back in 2019, United Against Hate Week, I led an effort with San Rafael City Schools that included San Rafael Police, Marin County Probation, the DA's office, and about 20 other organizations across Marin County who wanted to help recognize and support San Rafael schools in a program that we called Stories About Immigration. And it was Immigration Night. And it was there that many students shared their immigration story. And it was really led by the students, and all the adults were just there to support them. And we had over 500 people attend that session. And I still receive comments about how powerful it was to hear the students' stories and what their experience has been as an immigrant coming to San Rafael. So, although we have United Against Hate Week each November, as I said, this isn't a one and done program. We have our Racial and Social Equity Key Initiative, and in partnership with all of you, we'll work to be a community that is committed to safety, respect, and diversity for all. And so I thank you, I thank the staff, and I'm looking forward to our week, which is actually going to be in a couple of weeks, so we'll have the banners, and hopefully others are reading the book. I have my book, I'm reading. And we'll participate in the discussion. And thank you again, Thomas.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurtz, and thank you, Thomas. And a special shout out to Walter, who put together that video. I went on the United Against Hate website, and there are videos from all over. You almost get chills. And now that ours is going to be on there as well, they're from all over California, of elected officials and staff saying the similar words. So I'm glad that San Rafael is participating. So thank you. And thank you, Rachel, for being the key liaison with United Against Hate, not in our town group, and really ensuring that we show up in the way that we wanted to show up. So I will open public comment on this item. Oh, there's the city clerk.
Thank you. To comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. And if commenting by phone, please press *9. Once you hear the notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to provide public comment, and they'll be muted once time has elapsed. And I will request our timer. Okay, we do have a hand raised.
Thanks so much. Ava Crisanti, can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. It was a very interesting video. Having grown up in Marin with an Asian immigrant mother who had survived World War II, we definitely saw a lot of bias in Marin. And I think we made a mistake that's similar to a mistake you guys might be making, which is that we tended to see it from our own perspective, our own identity perspective, instead of understanding the larger context. So while we were very sensitive to anti-Asian sentiment, we were not always cognizant of how our neighbors in Marin City were being treated. And they were literally just 2 miles down the road from us because we grew up in Mill Valley. And I see a little bit of the same kind of, blindness here. I want to point out that you have a situation with that encampment where you are treating poor people absolutely unconstitutionally. And that's a very serious liability for the city, but it's also cruel and inhumane. And if it takes someone from outside of San Rafael to make that point to you, then I'm very grateful to be here because I think you should be told. One of the things that is of concern is something that Mrs. Lee highlighted when she complained about me, which is that you are not permitting attorneys or anyone else from outside to enter the camp and interview or take depositions from people living in the camp. So it's pretty much an internment camp of a sort. In fact, it has fewer amenities than the internment camp at Manzanar had, which is distressing. And it's a very deep disconnect from this video that you created, the self-congratulatory video, and the inhumane conditions, which included flooding during the storm. I mean, imagine.
I see no other hands raised at this time. I'll give everyone a couple of seconds. I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I'll close public comment. And it's always great to, as Councilmember Kurtz said, to have that moment where we pause and we come together and we lift each other up and we unite against hate. So thank you for that. We have 2 more presentations. The next one is presentation by Marin County on furthering fair housing. And it says Marin County to give the presentation. Well, we'll see who shows up from Marin County there. Oh, I see Director Judici. Okay. Oh, there she is, Liz Darby. I thought it might be you, Liz, but my sheet just said Marin County. So that is your title. And Lily, okay. Yes, Marin County's in the house. I will turn it over to Director Judici.
I will go ahead, and I'm not going to say a whole lot other than we're really grateful to have Liz and Lily join us today and provide this presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm Lily Thomas with the Marin County Community Development Agency, where I oversee our Housing and Federal Grants Program. And I'm joined tonight by Liz Darby, who has been doing fair housing and equity work for the county for a number of years, including our own assessment of fair housing. And we are here to talk to you about some work that we're doing in a collaborative way with our cities and towns and how we can work together to address a number of fair housing and civil rights issues as it relates to our housing element. So I'll turn it over to Liz, and then I'll be available to ask questions or answer questions at the end.
Thanks, Lily. Good evening, Kate, and members of the City Council. It's nice to see all of you, some of whom I haven't seen in quite a while. It's nice to see all of you. In tonight's presentation, I'm going to begin with our Restrictive Covenants Program. The Marin County Restrictive Covenants Program allows homeowners to identify any illegal or unlawful restrictive covenants in their property deeds and to assert that such covenants are illegal and inconsistent with the county's commitment to racial equity for potential homebuyers. A covenant is a legally enforceable contract imposed in a deed upon the buyer of a property. Racially restrictive covenants refer to legal agreements that prohibit the purchase, lease, or occupation of a piece of property by a particular group of people, and that prohibit a homeowner from selling or renting to anyone of a specific race or ethnic background. The Racially Restrictive Covenant Project was created to educate and inform Marin County residents and homeowners of the history and significance of discriminatory government policies and programs that created segregated communities. The project recognizes that restrictive covenants continue to be in our property deeds today and provide property owners with an opportunity to proactively make a change in their existing property deeds while acknowledging and recognizing they are illegal and not consistent with Marin County values. While restrictive covenants were used throughout the country, it also has a very local story here in Marin. Until the start of World War II, there were very few African Americans living in Marin County. Then in 1942, Marinship was created and workers were recruited to work at the 24/7 operation. A new community called Marin City was created to house some of the workers, and at its peak, there were 22,000 workers working at Marinship, and 6,500 of those workers and families lived in Marin City. 85% were white, 10% were Southern Blacks, and 5% were Chinese immigrants. And Marin City was considered one of the most diverse, racially integrated communities in the country. At the end of the war, military veterans returned in droves, and there was a housing shortage across the country. Under the National Housing Act, the Federal Housing Administration guaranteed bank loans to developers to increase housing across the country, with one condition: the homes that were developed could only be sold to white people. White veterans and their families returning from World War II were able to purchase homes with mortgages that were guaranteed by the federal government. Many homes in Marin in the 1940s were selling for $7,000 to $8,000, and in some cases, the monthly cost to purchase a home was less than what a family would pay to rent in public housing. The Federal Housing Administration also created a color-coded system based primarily on race to determine financial investments in a community. Color coding could determine whether your community received mortgage capital, financing for roads, sidewalks, schools, banks, parks, grocery stores, or whether your community would be locked in concentrated poverty. Neighborhoods outlined in green were considered the most desirable. Neighborhoods outlined in red, or who were redlined, were considered hazardous. And although federal laws prohibit overt forms of discrimination in housing today, the forces driving residential segregation have persisted in more subtle ways. These include single-family and exclusionary zoning policies and placing affordable housing in only low-income areas, while failing to construct affordable housing in high-resource neighborhoods, which are predominantly white. Racially restrictive covenants are part of Marin County's history. They were an effective way to segregate neighborhoods and stabilize the property values of white families. And the long-term effects of these discriminatory policies continue to impact communities of color even today. Homes again purchased in the 1940s in Marin could be bought for $7,000 to $8,000 and often with no money down. According to the County Assessor Recorder's Office, the median home price in Marin County in August and September was $1.7 million. The equity accumulated in those homes have enabled white families to pay for their college educations and for the college educations of their children. They've had the ability to fund their retirements, buy second homes, and homes for their children. They were able to bestow inheritances and create generational wealth. Through the county's Assessor Recorder's Office, residents are able to certify and affirm that illegal and racially restrictive covenants are unconstitutional and violate the current laws of our county. Residents who own homes before 1970s are encouraged to check their covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And if found, the property owner will have a chance to file a public statement protesting offensive passages by filing a restrictive covenant modification. And if homeowners don't wish to submit a modification, but wish to acknowledge to future homebuyers that illegal language exists in their deeds and that such language is in fact illegal, they can do so by submitting such language to the Community Development Agency. Since May, we've received a number of responses from residents who want to learn more about the program and want to participate in sharing their stories about how restrictive covenants can have affected their lives. Our website allows people to learn about the project, allows them to submit deeds for modification or certification, and provides a wide range of resources where people can learn about restrictive covenants. At the end of the project, we hope to be able to show a mapping of the areas in the county that have restrictive covenants, which will create Marin County's first red line mapping. We're also currently working with some of our homeowners associations and residents to identify those communities with subdivisions that may contain the covenants. And we are also working with the Marin County Office of Education to introduce this project into our schools. As we're beginning our community conversations about the housing element and the requirement to identify sites where housing can be developed, the Restrictive Covenant Project provides some context about why we are all required to address historic housing policies while also informing residents about existing segregated communities. And so now I'd like to talk a little bit about California Assembly Bill 686, which we often refer to as our requirement to affirmatively further fair housing. Many people confuse fair housing with affordable housing. And while they have much in common, fair housing are a set of laws. In fact, they're civil rights laws. Civil rights laws guarantee the rights of individuals to receive equal treatment and prohibits discrimination in a number of settings, one of which is housing. Under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, it is illegal to discriminate in the sale, rent, or financing of a house and housing-related transactions based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, and marital and familial status. Under California law, we have expanded the federally defined populations to include additional members of the protected classes. Fair housing isn't limited to discriminating against certain populations. It also means ensuring that all people have actual choice in where they live. Actual choice, protected choice, and enabled choice. So what does affirmatively furthering fair housing mean? Generally, it is having specific goals and a commitment to promote inclusive communities, further housing choice, address racial and economic disparities through government programs, policies, and operations, and it applies to all public agencies and all activities related to housing and community development. So basically, AB 686 requires all of us, all jurisdictions, to do in huge community outreach and engagement, to perform an assessment of fair housing practices, to do an analysis of your sites for housing at all income levels, to identify communities of high and low resources, and to create concrete and specific actions that affirmatively further fair housing. Community engagement is an essential component of the housing element and in each jurisdiction's responsibility to affirmatively further fair housing. We must do so early, often, and ongoingly. And most importantly, we must reach all economic segments of our population. As part of our outreach, we must ensure that there are translation services available. For most jurisdictions, that's both English and Spanish. You should include community-based organization in your area or community-based organizations that some of your residents engage with or participate. And all communication should be easy to understand by all residents and should not include a lot of government jargon and acronyms. As we do our outreach, we should consider how we engage with residents. We should make sure that our meeting sites are accessible for most residents. Meetings should be held outside of working hours like this one, including evenings and weekends to encourage participation. We should offer both in-person and electronic options for people to participate. And the draft of the housing element should be made in advance so that there's enough time for public review. Some strategies for community engagement could include creating focus groups that provides a sample of views, thoughts, and ideas from a very specific population. Reach out to your African American, Latinx, Asian, or disabled residents. That could provide you with an opportunity to hear directly from groups who are often not invited to the table. It also allows you to provide translation services and connects you to additional resources for future meetings. Consider identifying community leaders, whether they're a homeowners association representative or residents who already participate in community activities, and invite them to help coordinate meetings with their contacts. Consider engaging your business owners and ask them to engage their employees. And also consider reaching out to those who work in our homes and perform services to your residents. That can be a very helpful way to gain information and resources in identifying the challenges to working, living, and commuting in Marin. One of the essential elements of AB 686 is the requirement that all jurisdictions develop an assessment of fair housing. The assessment must consider factors that cause, increase, create, contribute, maintain, or perpetuate segregation, racially or ethnically concentrated areas of poverty, or significant disparities in access to opportunity and disproportionate housing needs. The assessment must also include a summary of fair housing issues that inform and prioritize specific goals and actions. Our assessment of fair housing analysis should also inform the identification of sites in a manner that affirmatively furthers fair housing. Site identification must assess whether your sites serve the purpose of replacing segregated living patterns with truly integrated and balanced living patterns. The analysis should not be limited to identifying sites for just low-income households, but should incorporate the jurisdiction's projected housing development at all income levels. The site analysis must include a review of your current zoning policies and ensure that the sites are truly meeting the requirement to affirmatively further fair housing. And they should identify adequate sites in housing, including rental housing, factory-built housing, mobile homes, and emergency shelters, and shall make adequate provisions for the existing and projected needs, again, at all income levels. The housing element requires the identification and prioritization of contributing factors that lead to specific goals and actions. And the housing element's goals must include goals, policies, and a specific schedule of actions during your planning period. The actions must be specific with timelines, discrete steps, and measurable outcomes that have a beneficial impact and must reflect the results of fair housing analysis and meeting the housing needs at all income levels. There must be specific commitments to deliverables, measurable metrics or objectives, definitive deadlines, dates, benchmarks for implementation. So in sum, California AB 686 means we must address significant disparities in our housing needs and in access to opportunities, replacing segregated living patterns with truly integrated and balanced living patterns, transforming racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity, and foster and maintain compliance with our civil rights and fair housing laws. And we must be intentional about replacing our segregated communities with truly inclusive opportunities and those that don't benefit some and burden others. And finally, affirmatively furthering fair housing means transforming racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity without the fear of displacement. The county has been working on affirmatively furthering fair housing for the last 5 years. Mayor Kate, you remember you were part of that whole process, and we've learned a lot about how to understand and implement the requirements, as well as to make meaningful impacts in some of our communities. And as always, we begin with the data and we let the data tell the story. So here's a sample of the data San Rafael will be receiving from the California Department of Housing and Urban Development, which you and your consultants will be using to create your housing element. So overall, San Rafael's population has increased and in some ways has become much more diverse in the last 20 years. The number of Asians, people who identify as multiple races, and your Latinx populations have all increased. On the other hand, the African American, American Indian, and the white population has decreased. In fact, San Rafael is more diverse than the county as a whole. Your more diverse population is at the younger age range, which could also provide an opportunity for you to plan your future housing needs with a more diverse group of people. San Rafael's housing stock is also more diverse than most communities here in Marin, with over 50% of your housing stock not as single-family homes. That said, the number of new housing that has been developed in the last 20 years continues to decline. And as you can see, renters are significantly more at risk of living in overcrowded conditions than your homeowners. And while the vast majority of your homeowners in San Rafael live in 3 to 4 bedroom units. Your renters occupy, and we're talking families, a wide range of housing types with the majority in the 0 to 2 bedroom units. Now, as we begin our conversations, our community conversations about who lives in affordable housing developments in Marin, it's important to highlight that a family of 4 in Marin County can earn up to $146,350 a year and qualify for affordable housing. It's extremely important to identify and clarify who we're really talking about living in affordable housing. And this should help inform residents and challenge existing stereotypes or assumptions about who is and will be living in our communities when we develop affordable housing. Now I'd like to draw your attention to that last line, which identifies the area median income for Marin. I'm going to get to it in just a second, but before I do, I think it's important to note that while the average rent in Marin County increased by 91% from 2009 to 2019, incomes in San Rafael increased by only 36%. Now again, let's take a look at that area median income, and we see that households of all races in San Rafael earn more than 100% of AMI. And there are also households of all races who own homes in San Rafael. At the same time, looking at what housing affordability looks like, according to HUD, affordable housing should not exceed 30% of your household income. That means for a household of 1, the monthly housing cost shouldn't be greater than $2,561. For a family of 4, it shouldn't exceed $3,659. So taking a look at these local employment figures, the sense is that most of these San Rafael residents are spending well more than 30% of their household income on housing. Now, again, this data, which is just a sample, is available for you at the through your consultant and your community development website. And now at this time, I would like to turn it back over to my colleague, Lily Thomas.
Thank you. And I know that was a lot. I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to point out that this effort is part of a grant that we have received from the Association of Bay Area Governments so that we can all collaborate. And Liz and I have been going around to all of the city councils, and our hope is that everybody, all of the decision makers around the county are able to start with the same base of information, because we're sharing this presentation. And so that as we're moving into doing our housing element and we're entering this new way of doing a housing element where equity and fair housing has to be woven into every aspect of it, including your site selection, your outreach, your programs and policies, that everyone will be starting that conversation with the same information. And so that's one of the goals of what we're doing tonight, and sharing some of this overview with you so that you decision makers around the county will have the same information. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Liz. Questions? There must be some. Well, I'll start out while my colleagues are thinking. So you did present a lot of information, and I was trying to grab it all as you went through. So is it available on the county website? Because I thought it was interesting, the broader, I'm well familiar with that, and seeing that San Rafael specific, some of that I knew, but you had some good graphs and charts in there, so.
We will be putting this, we have a website that has a page for every jurisdiction in the on your housing element, and we'll be putting each individual city's information on that website.
And Allie, if you want me to send you a copy of the slide deck, I'm happy to do that as well.
No, maybe great to have that on our city website. I mean, you did a great job of getting a lot of information put in one place. Hi, Jacob. Did you have something you wanted to?
Hi, Mayor. Well, Mayor Kate, I just wanted to let you know that city staff has received copies of this information, and we are integrating it into our community engagement and all of our information that we will be pushing out around the housing element. So stay tuned for more information on the city's website and in other ways and shapes and forms where we can push this information out to the community.
Excellent. Yeah, the timing is great in terms of us starting on our housing element. Yeah, Councilmember Kurtz.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I'm glad. I mean, I think this is the second or third time I've heard it, and I'm starting to get, especially around the restrictive covenant project. Are there steps to, when I've mentioned it to people and I say restrictive covenant project, I get a little bit of a blank stare. And then I said something in your home deed, language in your home deed that restricts who can live there. And they're like, oh, so is there somebody at the county or step by step that we can go to for general, because we don't want to bombard the assessor's office, right? And how do we communicate, or how do I communicate to my community how best to find out information about their home deed?
And so, Councilmember Reports, they can you can send them to me. I'm certainly happy to do that, and we field a lot of it. There's a team of us at the county that are working on it, and depending on what their requirements are, what they need, we'll get them to the right department. But you can always start with me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
And your email address is at ldarby@Marin County.
It is.
Just making sure. Okay. No, great question. Because people, because they understand it and they're like, wait, but I don't know how to go forward on that. So thank you. Additional questions? Yes, Councilmember Hill.
Actually, will we have an opportunity to make comments or just questions at this time?
We will have opportunity to make comments after public comment. So just any questions at this time?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. So we will invite the city clerk to see if there's any additional comments from the public, and then we will come back, and then I will actually have each of you have an opportunity to weigh in on this item.
To comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. And if by commenting by telephone, please press *9. And once you've heard the notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to provide public comments, and then will be muted once time has elapsed. We do have a couple speakers.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Damien here, native of Marin City, speaking as a community member. Racecounts.org, www.racecounts.org will tell you all that Marin County is the worst of all 58 counties in California towards people of color. Racial inequities, Marin County is number one, top of the worst. Secondly, hearing Liz mentions Marin City a lot. You know, when it's the right time to make your report seem outstanding, you guys mentioned Marin City, but you actually, the county, you do nothing for Marin City. You turn your back on Marin City still. You treat Marin City horribly. Hearing this report from you, Liz, is interesting because you work alongside with Marin Housing Authority in the county to dismantle 300 units in Marin City. You work with them to say that our plan is no good. So if you had your wish and the county's wish in Marin Housing Authority, 300 units for affordable housing in Marin City will be gone. So to hear you give this report is very ironic. Secondly, oh gosh, I'm forgetting my thought. Oh, as far as Marin City goes, you know, this report, what are you going to do to offset the lack of generational wealth besides go to some language and erase language in people's deeds? What are you going to do as a county to offset the wealth gap? What are you going to do meaningful things to offset the wealth gap that is created by the towns, cities, and counties? Again, what will Marin County do besides give nice, fancy reports? Thank you.
Yeah, this is John Reynolds. I'm a resident of the Canal. I'm a member of First United Methodist Church, San Rafael. We're really trying to move forward on being inclusive of LGBTQ persons in the United Methodist Church. And of course, the fair housing issue that you were talking about is great. It talks about race and culture and language and disability and family status. But how do we address issues where the discrimination is against LGBTQ persons as well as included in the issue of fair housing. That's important to recognize. And of course, I do respond favorably to supporting Marin City and Golden Gate Village, and we're moving forward on that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Ava Crisanti here. I second the comments of the prior two speakers. It's been a pleasure to hear Mr. Reynolds join the other white homeowning speakers show up on the Marin Housing Authority meetings. It's not too little too late, I hope. And it's very impressive. But there is a real effort right now to save Golden Gate Village and unfortunately the county. If you're in any of those meetings, it's been a rude awakening for a lot of white people in this county to see how Marin City is being treated. So it is a little odd and jarring to see Lily and Liz Darby show up to present on this. I do want to say that my grandfather was racially covenanted when he came to this country. He was not permitted to buy, and thank God we had a nice Jewish friend who he basically bought the house for him. He was a straw purchaser. But I think it's also important for us to note that because of the Cold War, there were not a lot of exceptions, but there were exceptions made for a certain class from the Asian population to move into white neighborhoods. And this was meant to mitigate criticism from basically from the Soviet Union of our racist policies. And so this was done, but it did not happen for all classes of Asians, and it definitely did not happen for Black people who had been brought to this country as slaves and who had been discriminated against in umpteen different ways. So there was never any equity in that, and that's really, really important when we look at equity in general. Thank you.
I see no other hands raised. I'll give everyone a few more seconds.
Okay.
I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment and come back to the council for additional comments. I actually did hear one question from the public around LGBTQIA. So if you could speak to that, Liz, and then we'll go to comments.
Yes, I mean, I'm sorry, I might have gone through that slide too quickly, but that, sexual orientation is covered under the fair housing laws, certainly in the state of California. So I apologize if I glossed over that too quickly. And for those who are experiencing any kind of discrimination, whether they be LGBTQ or others, we actually have Fair Housing of Northern California where you can actually file a complaint. And I would encourage anyone who is experiencing that to do so.
Thank you. No, and you did say that. It's just, as you said, it was a lot of information. So I just wanted to make sure that we had that clarification for the question that John provided. Okay, so Councilmember Hill, I know you wanted to go ahead and have some comments.
Yeah, I wanted just to express my gratitude to you, Liz and Lily, for coming to the council and bringing awareness to where we are and where we've been and the opportunity for where we can go. I think it's important to acknowledge all of this, and I think what's in front of us is up to us to make sure that we're continuing to examine what we can do. I did appreciate the call out of LGBTQIA plus status as a consideration. I think also in the verbiage, hopefully it's there as well, around gender identity, which is also another dimension in a similar vein. So again, I stand with you in this journey ahead of us, and the journey ahead is appropriately long, and we should be working very hard. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have any comments?
Just to support what Councilmember Hill has said, thank you very much for the excellent, detailed and thorough report. It is incredibly well timed. I'm delighted to hear that Jacob is receiving this information, and we will be able to incorporate it into our housing element so that we have a place to take all this great information that you've gathered and hopefully come up with a response to the commenter who wanted us to actually do something beyond just write fancy reports. So we're happy to take this information, take it into our housing element process and come up with actions that we can take in the future in light of these things that have happened in the past. So thank you very much for the good information.
Thank you. Councilmember Urens-Gulati.
Yeah, I also wanted to echo my other council members around the report. As you mentioned, the data speaks, and it's a great way to start. I definitely look forward to seeing more the data. There were one slide that the years were a little bit odd. So I really look forward to look at the data again and take a look at that. I also really appreciate the fact that you are going all over Marin County, not just in San Rafael, and that you mentioned that, in order to bring equity, we don't have to focus just in the low-income communities that currently exist, but it is extremely important that we look at our entire communities, and we also build this fair housing in areas that they are very affluent. So I look forward to continue the work. There is a lot to do, but I really want to appreciate you being here tonight and for the report. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz.
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments from fellow council members. I also like to say, this does provide a really great rubric as we go forward in terms of really checking, having a checkbox of different things. And the data just speaks volumes. When you share that data of Marin to anywhere else in the country, except New York, people are shocked for a family of four, what is considered low. And that people cannot live here. It makes it really difficult. So I think it's really important that we're working under some very, very crazy scenarios that a lot of people don't really understand. And so it does really provide a good framework for us to go forward and what the work that we need to do to provide the level of housing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll echo what my colleagues said. We appreciate you, Lily and Liz, coming. I think I've also seen this presentation 3 times, which means that this is the 3rd time that you guys are out there really talking to all of the different agencies and organizations about our responsibility and what we need to do going forward. And I thought it was interesting the caller talked about the race counts reports, because I remember when that came out and the county actually had Richard Rothstein come and talk about the color of law and really that intersection. And my hope is that in my lifetime, then, when the race counts reports come out, that the data is totally different and that we've actually made improvement where we need to do it. So I'm actually really interested in that intersection of how those numbers show up. So part of, as Councilmember Hill says, part of a long conversation, and really are glad that you are here to help us kick it off in a very definitive way. We've been having it here, obviously, in San Rafael for a very long time, but being very deliberate. So with that, thank you so much. We'll let you go on. You're probably zooming into another council meeting somewhere. So thank you both for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you. Okay. The final special presentation, boy, we have all different ones today. I see Director Guerin has joined us. It's a presentation by Caltrans on a proposed roundabout at Freitas Parkway off-ramp. I think this has been a 20-year conversation where we're having all sorts of things that have come forward to now. So I will turn it over to you, Director Guerin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bill Guerin with the Department of Public Works. I'm excited to introduce Wajahat Niaz and Matt Korb from AECOM. Wajahat's from Caltrans. They came to us with a bus relocation project a year or more ago. And in the process of exploring that with us, they have now created a huge improvement to this area of San Rafael, a roundabout that'll incorporate the Redwood Highway, Civic Center Boulevard, and the Freitas Parkway off-ramp. So I'm not going to speak any longer except to introduce Wajahat from Caltrans, who will, I think, probably introduce Matt. And Matt has a very short presentation for us to bring us up to date on this project. So Wajahat?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Wajahat Niaz. I am the Regional Project Manager for Marin County.
And I'm here, Caltrans is here to present the ADA improvement and roundabout project at the Manuel T. Freitas Parkway and Route 101 interchange. And I'm here with two of my team members. Matt Crow, he's our design consultant, and he will be doing a 10-minute presentation, a short 10-minute presentation. And Prakash Siva, who's a project manager. Prakash and I here to answer questions afterwards. So with that said, I will hand it over to Matt. Matt, you want to take over?
Yes, thank you, Wajahat, and thank you to the City Council for allowing us to speak with you today. I just want to take a few minutes to go over the project and share it with you. The overall project is at that intersection of Manuel Freitas, the interchange at Manuel Freitas Parkway and US 101. The purpose of the project is primarily an ADA upgrade project, pedestrian safety, and the scope to address that purpose and need is to be either reconstructing or removing non-compliant ADA facilities and upgrading them or removing them. In addition, we'll be relocating the bus stop that's currently in the northbound direction in between the on and off ramps to outside the state right-of-way onto the frontage road, and reconstructing the intersection of Roundabout Highway and Civic Center Drive on the east side of the interchange to be a single lane roundabout. The benefits to the City of San Rafael for this project are primarily going to be improved safety for not only pedestrians, but vehicles as well, improved traffic operation, particularly on the local street intersection and that interface with the northbound ramps on that side of the interchange. The improved traffic operation is going to help reduce emissions and also reduced long-term maintenance as compared to a traffic signal operation. We've also been made aware of the city's long-term desire to convert the west side of the interchange, the intersection over there, to a roundabout as well. And so this is going to be one half of a possible pair of roundabouts on either side of that interchange. The current construction cost estimate is $3.3 million. And that's for the roundabout as well as some improvements on the west side of the interchange. And our our schedule, we're looking to get to construction by spring of 2023. We're currently in final design, beginning that process, and possibly complete construction by October of 2023. Many of you probably know this intersection, this interchange in the north part of San Rafael. Manuel Freitas Parkway is a 4-lane arterial, runs roughly east-west, and US 101 runs north-south. This picture is looking due north. Manuel Freitas Parkway has sidewalks only on the north side of the roadway. And if you can see my mouse moving around, it runs along the north side of the roadway here and around the corner. We have southbound off ramp and a loop on ramp. And in between the two ramps is a bus stop for the southbound running buses that is accessed via a pedestrian path that goes between the ramps up to Manuel Freitas Parkway. On the other side of the freeway, we've got the frontage roads of Roundabout Highway and Civic Center running very close to the freeway, a northbound loop on ramp and loop off ramp down over here. And again, we have a similar bus stop for the northbound buses. And this bus stop is accessed currently only by a path that runs along the freeway underneath the overpass and around all the way up Roundabout Highway and loops back onto Manuel Freitas Parkway over this direction, since there's no path running down between the ramps. Now, both of the bus stops have a safety concern regarding that crossing down here where the pedestrians have to cross the loop on ramp at an uncontrolled location to get to the bus stop. That happens on both sides, right there and right there. And also the sidewalks and curb ramps along Manuel Freitas Parkway are not in ADA compliance. So We have some proposed improvements to deal with these non-compliant ADA facilities. On the west side of the interchange, we'll be upgrading the sidewalk and curb ramps along the north side, starting at the state right-of-way at the left side of the screen and working all the way up to the bridge abutment. This will also include some rest areas along the path leading down to the bus stop and some extra access points down to that bus stop over there. This bus stop will remain in place for this project, the southbound bus stop. And then we'll be removing these non-compliant staircase that lead up to the bridge. They go down the slope through these trees, and there's a path that leads across this ramp and over here. So we'll be removing that facility there because it's not ADA compliant and crosses the ramp at an uncontrolled location. So this access will be the only access down to that ramp. We're also making some improvements to the median nose here, providing a proper pedestrian refuge, pedestrians crossing the intersection in north-south direction have a safe place to hide behind the median if they can't make it across in one crossing. There'll be a push button there and everything. The other side of the interchange, a little more work happening on this side. The ADA improvements, similar to the west side of the interchange, will continue. We'll be replacing the sidewalk along the north side of the Manuel Freitas Parkway and around the corner to a new crossing to this side of the roadway, where pedestrians can go continue on the sidewalk that is on the north side. The east side of Roundabout Highway and Civic Center Drive. In addition to that, because there's no ability to access the bus stop in the northbound direction via a path other than the one that goes wrapping around the entire interchange. This project proposes to remove that bus stop and all the items you see in blue here and relocate it to this location on Roundabout Highway. So access to this bus stop will be via this widened sidewalk and crossing this location and then back over Manuel Freitas Parkway to all the facilities on that side and the other bus stop. We're also proposing to replace the currently partially stop controlled intersection with a single lane roundabout, as you can see here. This will allow all movements that are currently allowed at the intersection, but obviously be more free flowing because there will be no stop signs. The ingress location into the development that is up on the east side of that roadway, there's kind of an office complex up there, will be maintained. That'll be an ingress only into the development. Their exit driveway is on the south side of their development that connects down to the other end of Civic Center Drive there at Marybell Drive. I'm going to move quickly into through the staging, post-staging that we have for the project. We are looking at doing a 4-stage process to complete this project. This is stage 1. The colors represent the area of work or area that is closed off to the public to do work. And then the green in this drawing is the proposed pedestrian path. It is a large scale to show the entire interchange, but the idea here is to just give you a general idea of what our proposed staging is be and what the effect might be on the traveling public. So in stage 1, the work will be limited to the west side of the east side of the interchange. And primarily working on the retaining wall that'll be required up against the hillside there at the existing northeast corner of the Roundabout Highway and private driveway intersection. Access to the private driveway, as well as north-south travel on the frontage road will be maintained, and pedestrian pathway will be secured with K-rail or some other protective device to shield the pedestrians from the vehicles traveling back and forth. So there'll be no restrictions on vehicle movements or pedestrian movements, and the pedestrians will be accommodated around the construction site.
Matt, I'm not seeing the slides. Are your slides moving?
Yes, can everyone see the current proposed stage one?
Yeah, Matt, we can see it. Keep going.
Okay, excellent. In this stage here, you can see the two bus stop symbols. This is where the bus stop is located, and it's important to note that through all of construction, the bus stops will remain active. And in particular, the northbound bus stop will remain active in its existing location until its replacement on Redwood Highway is operational. And once the buses have transferred to that operational bus stop, the old bus stop will be removed. Moving on to stage two. Stage two is going to be a 55-hour closure, which is basically a long weekend. I heard discussion of several 55-hour closures on a different project earlier during the presentation. The work here is intended to include most of the ADA improvements, where we'll be replacing the sidewalk and curb ramps along the north side of Manuel Freitas Parkway. In order to do this work, we're having to move the pedestrians into the slow lane of westbound Manuel Freitas Parkway. So we'll be closing that lane and barricading it off and allowing pedestrians and cyclists to use that lane to get around the traffic as we replace, while we're replacing the sidewalks that they would normally walk on. Access to the bus stop on the southbound direction will be maintained via a path through the opening in the southbound off-ramp and connect to the existing pathway that goes down the ramp between the two ramps and connect to that bus stop. The southbound off-ramp and loop on-ramp will be closed for this long weekend, so access will be closed to those ramps. However, the bus stop will remain active, so the exit will be closed to all traffic except for buses in this situation. During that closure, you can see the yellow and orange here represent the areas that are closed. So those two areas are closed. Traffic intending to use those facilities will be detoured via the same color coding that you see on here. So the off-ramp will be detoured down the freeway to San Pedro, the next interchange. Well, they will turn around and come back on the freeway to exit again here on Manuel Freitas. And once they do that, they can go to their destination point. The loop on ramp, would also be closed. So traffic attempting to access that from westbound Manuel Freitas will be directed around the block, Northgate, Las Gallinas, and Presidio Boulevard, so they can come up and use the southbound slip-on ramp. Stage three is the big stage. So this is the stage where the intersection of Redwood Highway and Civic Center Drive over here will be completely closed. We're expecting this to last approximately 2 months because we were able to build the retaining wall ahead of time, which is the longest lead time for this project, is to build that. So it's a short duration, relatively speaking. Access will be closed to vehicles. It will also be closed to this ingress to the development. As I said, their main driveway, both in and out, is to the south off of Maribel. So they'll have access to their facility and all their parking garages via that entrance. We don't actually have work this far down Civic Center. The color is to denote that entire section of Civic Center will be closed at Maribel, which is the next intersection down there. The green line is going to be our pedestrian access route. So we'll be able to maintain a connection from the sidewalk on Redwood Highway across the street in a protected crossing that we'll construct through the construction site and around the newly constructed sidewalk from the previous stage over Manuel Freitas Parkway, and then that pedestrian traffic can continue around the shopping mall down to Maribel and across the freeway back to the other to where Civic Center Drive intersects there. That allows them to get around the construction site in that way. I do want to note that the interchange on and off ramps remain fully functional in this stage. as well as the on-ramp off of Roebuck Highway, and the bus stops are all fully functional in this setting. While that area is closed, we've got a series of detours planned for traffic intending to get off on Manuel Freitas Parkway and then turn north onto Roebuck Highway. They'll be redirected to stay on the freeway and go up to the next interchange at Smith Ranch Road, and then simply turn south and come back down Roebuck Highway and access their destination that way. Residents that were intending to exit here and use Civic Center Drive can still exit here. They'll be directed to continue along Manuel Freitas and go around the block again at Northgate, past the mall, and cross the freeway at Marydale, at which point they'll be back at the destination they were seeking at Civic Center and be able to go on their way. This is the routing we're looking at for traffic that is on the local roads, coming southbound on Roebuck Highway, attempting to go through this intersection. They'll follow the orange path in this case, so they'll be coming south. The roadway will be closed, but the on-ramp will be open. So they'll be able to turn onto the freeway and travel back north to Smith Ranch Road, at which point they can get off the freeway and turn around, come back southbound on the freeway to go through this interchange and then access their destination. For traveling public that is south of the interchange, perhaps reaching Civic Center Drive at Marydale where the roadway will be closed, they'll be directed to turn left and cross the freeway at Marydale and come up around the mall using this purple route and up to Presidio Boulevard, where they can either turn left or right, depending on their ultimate destination. The final stage of the project is relatively minor. The full project is constructed. The roundabout is operational. You can see it here in the faded kind of tan color. That's where it would be located. The bus stop has now been moved in the northbound direction to its new location on Roebuck Highway. And now that it's been relocated, we can remove the non-compliant ADA facilities related to the bus stop, the staircase and this pathway, as well as the bus stop itself from between the on and off ramp, and then some other minor finishing work near the roundabout. In this case here, all movements for both pedestrians and vehicles are unimpeded. There are no detours, and everything is available. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present this project to you. And certainly if you have any questions, we can answer them through either Caltrans or Bill can answer them, or maybe me. Thank you.
Would you take down your screen, please?
Certainly.
Thank you. So what we'll do is see if there are any questions from the council, and then we'll go out to public comment. The one thing I did just want to start, so we're talking about all that you just went through, that would happen in 2023, right? Because we are talking
That's
about
correct.
closures. I just want to make sure really clear for the public that's watching, because we talked about closures at the beginning of the meeting, because we're talking about the off-ramp San Rafael exit, and I just wanted to be clear that you are sharing the projection in the future. Okay, I just wanted to start out. Okay.
Yes, it'll be in 2023 and last approximately 6 months, the total construction.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that you're working on longer timelines. Okay, Vice Mayor, I think I saw your hand go up.
Thank you. I have two questions for Matt and one for Bill. So I'll start with Matt. How tall is the retaining wall?
Maximum height of 8 feet.
8 feet. And what design, because I'm thinking it's going to be relatively prominent. Have you decided on the design or what it's going to look like?
We have not. That's a little bit down the road in the final design to determine what architectural treatment would be on the wall. There will be an architectural treatment on the wall. It may or may not closely resemble the existing wall that is in that location. Because there is a short wall there that's a private wall that kind of has a fieldstone kind of a facade to it, if you know that intersection, and we'll be moving a fair portion of that wall, but also retaining a portion of it that goes up the private driveway. And so this wall would be connecting to that wall, the portion that still exists. So there's a distinct possibility that we would be matching that wall to continue the aesthetic, but that still is yet to be determined.
This is Wajahat. We will come to the city council with the design, and we will run through the city public works and make sure that it's acceptable to everyone before we finalize the design.
Very good, thank you. My second question for Matt is about Golden Gate Transit. That's the bus service provider. Have you been in touch with them regarding these your proposal for relocating their bus stop?
We have. I think Wajahat would be better to answer that question though.
So I guess I lost you. Can you please repeat the question?
Have you been in touch with Golden Gate Transit? That's the provider of bus service along the 101 corridor. It's your bus stop. They're prepared to get that yes. You're proposing to, as well as Marin Transit. I'm assuming that that's a Golden Gate Transit stop, but it might be a Marin Transit bus stop.
Yes, we have been in touch with all the transit agencies, and we have shared our plans with them. And when we develop more details, we'll share it again, make sure that they're on board.
Right, and you'll get their agreement and their input. Yes. Sounds great. Thank you. My last question is for Director Guerin. Has the city traffic engineer reviewed this proposal, and did the city traffic engineer develop an opinion on this proposal?
Yes, Vice Mayor, we did review this early on with Caltrans. In fact, it was our suggestion to look at a roundabout solution there. And Rufat is actually online, but I don't think he needs to speak to it. He reviewed it and is very excited to see this plan moving forward, and very happy that Caltrans has pursued this for us.
Oh, it looked good to me, but I wanted to make sure that the experts thought it was good. Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. Councilmember Hill.
Actually, I had a follow-up question about traffic engineering. So is the city anticipating adjustments to the traffic signal timing inside of the area during stage 3, especially because we need to accommodate maybe temporary traffic patterns of more traffic moving through the area? Would we anticipate any adjustments to the signal timing to make that acceptable so we're not ending up with unacceptable queuing?
That'll be part of Caltrans design. They'll review the traffic signals and the timing of the traffic signals as part of their project, and make recommendations to us, which we'll review and agree or argue with. But we'll have that discussion with Caltrans when the time comes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I'll go to Councilmember Urens-Gulati, and then I'll end with you, Councilmember Kurtz, because you and I actually have seen the presentation before, so I was going to let them go first. So, Councilmember Micah.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I was also curious about the ridership, if you had done some analysis with the riders, but I guess you answered that question already. And I know it's in 2023, so we're still a little bit, oops, I'm sorry. My dog is, the moment I open my mouth, he has to say something as well. So my question is around communications, and I know that is for 2023, but how are you planning to communicate with the community, with the ridership? And honestly, I grew up with a lot of roundabouts, but here we don't have that many. So are you going to do some sort of like education around that? Because I can just see some of the traffic goes pretty fast around there, and how are you going to communicate?
So there are two aspects of it. We have one communication that we are kind of getting into right now, is where we are sharing the plans and trying to see what the plan should look like. And then before construction, we will have a outreach. We'll do an outreach campaign where we will have a meeting, outreach meeting. We will send out flyers, notices. We'll put information on websites, city websites, our own websites, to educate the public of what's going to happen during construction. And this is an area where we also like some input from the city council and from the community at large, which is the best way to communicate. And we'll be working through Bill, and hopefully, collectively we can come up with a program that is effective and can reach out to the community. So this is still something in works, but we are open to suggestions.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Councilmember, I think, as you know, there's a traffic circle just down the street from this one in the Civic Center. So I think people, hopefully in this area at least, are starting to get used to it.
I don't know. We'll see.
We'll hope that. Councilmember Kurtz, as I mentioned, we were privy to this presentation prior. You have great questions. Actually, I was kind of smiling because many of the questions we asked the same ones. So
yeah, it was a lot, and I appreciate all the answers. Thank you. And I know there's going to be. I see Warren's going to has a question. I'm sure we're going to be. There'll be a question around bike paths. So maybe we could highlight that sooner than later. And then, in terms of the process, I mean, we are now talking 2 years out, at least 2 years out. And so when does it come back to City Council? So I'm not sure whether Bill, will the community be involved in that process, or does it just come back to City Council right before construction?
Our intention is to begin briefing the community very soon. Just bringing them up to date on the project and the schedule for the project. We will continue outreach through the development of the design. I think Wajahat didn't say it, but they're seeking funding with the design that they have, and their funding process is quite long. So it's important for them to get the community feedback now with the idea that they're moving forward into design development, which is predicated on funding. So they're planning for the project. We're looking forward to it happening, and we will continue to brief the public as the project develops.
Great. And just to share, Director Guerin and I have already spoken about scheduling a community forum session to specifically talk about this project for this district. So everyone's welcome, but we'll put the message out soon.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will open it up to public comment. There's the city clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. To comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If commenting by telephone, please press *9. And once you've heard a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to provide public comment, and then will be muted once time has elapsed. We do have our public comment timer up. Ava, are you there? I will move to the next speaker.
Hi, Mayor Kate, members of the City Council. This is Warren Wells, Policy and Planning Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I have a couple questions. I want to thank the project team for their presentation. I have a couple questions about the final project and one about construction staging. So as Councilmember Kurtz anticipated, I was wondering if the presenters could talk about bike access through the roundabout. Just looking at the conceptual designs shown, I wasn't able to discern what was there, which I will say brings to mind a roundabout built fairly recently at Olympic and Pleasant Hill in the city of Lafayette, where there was an experienced cyclist killed back in April. His name was Joe Shami. That's the bike access question. Second, this is about the west side non-ADA compliant stairs that are proposed to be eliminated. I was wondering if there's any analysis being done about how many people are currently using those today and what the additional walking time would be for people traveling between that southbound stop and the east side of US 101. And whether any consideration was given to signalizing the southbound on-ramp to improve safety for people accessing that stop by those stairs, which are planned to be removed. Lastly, for stage 3 of construction, I was wondering what bicycle access is intended for people traveling between Civic Center and north on Redwood, like if you were heading to the sports complex up there. Will bicycle riders be able to access Redwood, or are they expected to travel as pedestrians between Freitas and Del Presidio and the temporary crossing on Redwood north of that interchange? Those are all my questions. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And what we'll do is finish with public comment, and then we'll come back and answer any questions that have been put forth.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm in a very unique perspective on, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do read a view. I could picture exactly what's going to be like on that intersection. First question is, any of the engineers or project manager does live around this Terraninda area or San Rafael in overall? Any of you live here?
So go ahead and do your public comment, Sunny.
Yes,
And then
yes.
at the very end.
So, okay. So would you please answer that? Yeah, thank you. Would you please answer that when you answer my question? If any of you guys actually live here. I have lived in Freitas Parkway and Redwood Highway, and I personally believe this is actually a beautifully designed intersection. Very few of the congestions happen in this exit ramp. The one more problem is how many ADA, ADA is absolutely important, and it's been enforced by the state mandate. I understand that. But I would like to know how many ADA wheelchair accessible bus riders or pedestrians are using it in this particular intersection, if there's any number has been done. And also there are some other options could have, because I have seen Roundabout in the Civic Center area. There's so many cars, skid marks go over, and there was collision not long ago, about a year and a half ago. And also if you go to San Anselmo, there's another roundabout. You could go see it. There's a lot of skid mark. And I think it has to be really, really considered deeply the driver's style or habit or culture of the community. Thank you.
Good evening, this is Kate Powers. I'm a resident of Terra Linda. Thank you for the presentation. This is the first time I've heard of it. I use that intersection frequently, and this is kind of actually shocking to me. And my concern is that there's frequently a queue of cars that would like to turn left from Freitas Parkway onto Redwood. Often 7, 8, 9, 10 cars. And we have to wait until the traffic that's leaving the highway, usually from 65 down to 40 or 45, flying up into Freitas Parkway as they're starting to slow down. And there's often not a gap between cars where you have to wait a long time, and then frequently 2 or 3 cars try to go really fast and then get up through that intersection to swerve right and go south, or to get up and go left. My concern is that when you're stopped and you're against the traffic that's flying off the highway, you don't really have enough time if you're going into a roundabout that's slow and you have this queue of cars that are trying to get to Redwood Highway. It just scares me. It's already scary. The thought of going into a roundabout is more scary. And then just quickly, a question that I was wondering about. If you're heading north on Redwood Highway and you wanted to turn left onto Freitas, do you have to enter the roundabout, turn right on the roundabout and go all the way around? Or is there in this design a way to head left onto Freitas without entering the roundabout? I couldn't tell from the design. And if you're heading north on Redwood Highway, there's usually a stop there. And if you want to go into Freitas, you turn.
Yeah. Okay, your 2 minutes were up, but I think we got the gist of what you're talking about. So we will talk about how everyone needs to go through the roundabout, but the engineers will talk about that. Any additional questions or comments on this item, Lindsay?
We have a few more hands raised.
Oh, okay.
Laura, you may be muted.
Oh, no, I'm not. I didn't know if it was my turn to speak. I just got unmuted. Sorry.
We're ready for you.
I would like to invite all of you to go look at the roundabout at the Civic Center. I am there every Thursday for the farmers market. I'm there every Sunday for the farmers market on the other side. And should I have to go north from the Sunday farmers market, I am stuck at that roundabout. If I happen to leave that direction, I try not to leave that direction because of that. That is such a cog because first of all, you never know if somebody's getting off because nobody uses their blinker. And I'm not going to expect them to start now, but they don't. So I then need to wait till there's actually nobody coming to move like 30 feet just to make a right turn from the street into the Civic Center. It's crazy. I am very disappointed in this thought. And what's sort of amusing about this whole thing is that Nader Mansourian actually won an award for that exit the way it is now, which is interesting. At any rate, I do hope that people who live here definitely know that roundabout. I remember when they proposed it after somebody got hit by a car and then all of a sudden there came a roundabout. So I'm very disappointed. I do not particularly like the idea. I think it's going to stop up traffic like crazy. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Grace Garrity. I'm a resident of Terra Linda and also Executive Director of Responsible Growth in Marin. And thank you so much for the presentation. I would like to know if you're taking into consideration that by 2024 or 2025, the main entrance into a very new and much busier North Gate Mall will be through Marydale. So there's going to be ideally a lot more traffic than there is today coming from the south and getting off to go into, and it's, there's going to be about 900 apartments, at least in phase one, in addition to retail and restaurants. So please take a look at that very, very carefully. And I also want to echo that the previous two speakers, Lori and Kate, the roundabout has not been as successful as ideally it should be. I've read a lot of studies and they work phenomenally in many communities, frankly, the majority, and especially in Europe. I don't totally understand why it's not working as efficiently as it frankly should by Civic Center. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hi, this is Bill Carney. San Rafael is generally very supportive of roundabouts. I do think this is, notoriously hazardous off-ramp interchange. So I would ask that the traffic engineers take a really close look and make sure that, the existing conditions are actually improved by this new improvement. I also, I noted that you referenced complete streets and also reductions in emissions. This is really a great results from this project. Along both those lines, I would ask that you consider big trees to be added in the considerable real estate within your right-of-way that you control here. And that will have great greenhouse gas emission absorptive value. And also that the pedestrian access through the area really be a priority in your planning, so that this is it's very difficult for people walking to deal with large amounts of land turned over to the priority of cars. So anything you can do to make particularly the access to the transit as pleasant as possible, please pursue that. One particular item on the west side, access to the west side bus stop, it looks like there's an opportunity to pull that walkway a little bit away from the oncoming traffic and give pedestrians a little more comfortable way of getting down there. So appreciate you taking a look at that as you develop the design. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Ava Crisanti. I wanted to just point out that I know there was a comment about whether you really needed ADA compliance. And I want to just remind everyone that in any new publicly funded project, it's now required under both federal law and state law that these projects be ADA compliant. So that's not something that should ever be questioned. The other question about that was, had you done a count of how many people required ADA access? Well, the problem with that question is that if you've been failing to provide adequate ADA access, or if it's been in disrepair, then people will not be using it who require ADA access. So you're artificially keeping that number low. And that's really, really important, especially because in Marin, you have an aging community. You have a lot of older homeowners, and presumably not all of these people are going to continue to be able to drive as much as they do. And that's one of the reasons why, it's part of this conversation is so sad. Growing up in Marin in the 70s, we knew what was coming, and we knew that we had to transition to, more environmental means of transportation, and no one did. And in fact, what happened is, everyone started driving Range Rovers and Land Rovers, and the old ethos of just driving an old car in Marin was trashed in favor of more polluting vehicles. And the electric vehicles aren't much better, sadly. You can do more with bikes, electric bikes even, but you have to try. Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, but I'll give everyone a few seconds. Once again, if you're calling in, you can press *9 to provide public comment and raise your hands. And if you're using Zoom, you'll need to press the raise hand button. I see no further public comment.
Thank you. I will close the public comment. I'll just quickly go through the questions that I heard. I'm rephrasing some of those because I for clarity. So the first one was around bike access at the roundabout. Next one was around the west side, the ADA stairs, what happens there. Stage 3 bike access. The one about whether you live here, I think that's more how are you getting local input, because we want to make sure whatever is here reflects the local community needs. Second one is just reiterating the ADA aspect of this project. And then there's some questions about very specific questions that Kate had about Freitas turning left and right. So hopefully you followed all of those, but I think it's general flow around Freitas. So I think if you talk about that will answer those questions. Two more. One, how will the change in the housing units affect the future traffic flows? And then finally, we're going to assume, but we'd like to hear that this project actually will improve traffic conditions. There seemed to have been some concern that this might make the through fare not as good as it is today. So that's kind of a broad. Those are the ones that I had captured. And then there were some obviously additional comments and input about desires. So Director Guerin, I don't know if you want to start or how we want to do it, or how do you want to navigate those? And if I missed any, please let me know.
I think Matt's going to probably have to bring up the presentation again to demonstrate the bike pathways. I'll grab a few of them while he's trying to do that. There will be no bike access through this intersection during the stage 3 construction. It is traffic, pedestrian, and bicycles are being diverted. We're cognizant of the bike paths that are in the master plan, and these are supportive of the bike ped master plan. As it relates to housing and the impact that it might have on housing, we do know that that Northgate Mall is transforming. There will be a change in traffic patterns there. We believe that roundabouts are a successful way to move a lot of traffic through intersections, and we're looking at potential other roundabout solutions on the Northgate side of the freeway to complement this, as Matt said earlier in his presentation, in order to move more traffic through the Freitas intersections, where Northgate goes in and out. So we are looking at that and are expecting to make improvements there over time as well. ADA access, I think, I thought that was pretty well addressed, but this project is in fact an ADA accessibility project. The structures that are there today are staircases and very long pathways. A pedestrian getting off the freeway northbound, where they do at the beginning of the Freitas off-ramp, has to walk clear back up under the freeway, turn back around, come back to the overpass, walk across the overpass before they can get to Northgate Mall. This project will improve that significantly because the buses will stop basically right at the intersection where people can walk and go straight across. It puts them on the same level as the overpass itself, so there's not a big hike up the hill, whether on a ramp or on stairs. On that side of the freeway, on the other side of the freeway, it is a ramp, but it will be ADA accessible. I think Matt mentioned that there's going to be rest stops along the way, which are a requirement of ADA now, and we'll land at the intersection there at Del Presidio, so pedestrians can then cross the street, cross Freitas Parkway into the Northgate Mall area. I hope I hit most of your questions, Mayor.
Wow, that was impressive.
And Matt, if you don't mind bringing up your presentation and walk through the bike path, it obviously is similar to the pedestrian path, but we did discuss that.
The bike path, and then also just if you could highlight, Matt, too, the flow of cars, because I think there were some questions too about on and off of Freitas. If you could just talk to those again.
Bill, you did a great job. You covered everything. I was following you through my map as you covered it, so everything was spot on. So this is the east side interchange that shows the roundabout. Excuse me. Pedestrian pathways are going to be very similar to the existing condition. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little better in the roundabout here. So there's a sidewalk on the east side of Civic Center, and then also on Redwood Highway on the other side of the intersection. So we're going to be conforming to those and just reconstructing those. They will be wider, at least 10 feet wide, going around the circle because the cyclists, there'll be a cyclist access ramp off of Civic Center to get up onto this pathway. So bicyclists can travel around the circle outside of the traffic stream if they desire to do so. Bicyclists can also traverse the circle as vehicles if they choose to, but you provide that alternate route for cyclists who want to use it. The pedestrians access now crossing Redwood Highway. There's an existing crossing right here. You can kind of see it in the aerial in the background. That crossing will be here in the finished condition. It's a much shorter crossing, and we only have to cross one lane at a time with a refuge in the middle. So pedestrians look only one direction. This is a benefit of roundabouts in general, is that the crossings for pedestrians are generally much shorter, and you're only crossing one direction of vehicle traffic at a time. So the pedestrian only has to look one direction and worry about traffic coming from one direction. So then it's generally a safer crossing, statistically shown. But that crossing will then wrap up and go over the overpass, similarly to how it does now, except the sidewalk will be brand new and 8 feet wide and ADA compliant as well. As Bill noted, the pathway for the bus, it'll be blocked off. The existing pathway goes all the way down Redwood Highway and then around and under the overpass here. That little path, you can see it through the trees, and then goes along here and crosses right here at this uncontrolled location to where the bus stop is. So we're looking to eliminate that. And so the bus stop gets moved over here to Redwood Highway, where the path is much shorter. We have a much wider brand new sidewalk, and they'll be able to cross and go around up onto here instead of having to walk all the way over here and all the way up Redwood Highway and back around. So it is a much shorter distance on this side, and it'll be new and ADA compliant. But the staircase will be removed at this location here. The travel Sorry, did you have a question, council member? I saw a hand being raised.
Yes, it's actually more around, I just wanted to ask the question while you had this picture, but it is not related to that. It's more about the traffic going with the car. So I can wait until you finish if you want.
Okay, so perfect. I'll just, the other point that I recall now after that long bit of questions was the way that traffic traverses the roundabout. There was a question about if you're on northbound Civic Center and you're wanting to turn left onto Manuel Freitas, in the existing condition, there's a stop sign and a left turn lane, and you wait for your open spot and you make your left. So in the roundabout configuration, all traffic in the frontage road intersection, which is separate from the ramp intersection, which is here, has to traverse the roundabout. So all vehicles, it's only one lane. You enter the roundabout when you have an acceptable gap in traffic, and you circle the roundabout and exit at whichever exit you're intending to exit. So once you're in, you have the choice of the private driveway going into the office complex, going north on Redwood Highway, going westbound on Manuel Freitas, or if you keep going all the way around, you can make a U-turn and go back out the other direction. But it's all relatively free flowing, rather than having to come to a stop and wait for this uncontrolled traffic that is currently coming off of the ramp and off of Manuel Freitas that has no control, and they would be able to make turns. So you just enter the circle and then exit again. So the question is, yes, you would have to enter the circle and basically make a left turn in the circle.
Hey, Matt, this is Bill. Would you just hit coming on Freitas Parkway and moving up to Civic Center Drive or Redwood Highway and the refuge that's in the sort of red hatched area there?
Certainly. Thanks for the reminder. Yes, so the traffic on Manuel Freitas has two lanes coming in. The left of the lanes will be a left turn only lane, which is what it is now, to access into the roundabout. So we're not proposing any changes to the way that the ramp intersection works. The on and off ramps will function exactly the same way. They'll be free flowing, uncontrolled, for both the on and off ramps. So the left turning vehicles that the commenter spoke about will still have to wait for an acceptable gap of the northbound off ramp traffic as they come off and continue on to Manuel Freitas to make their left across into the intersection. So it functions exactly the same as it does now. The difference is that they're coming into a circle. There's enough space for 3 or 4 cars in this space here. This is the lead up to the roundabout. Let me zoom in a little bit closer if I can. It doesn't seem to want to let me, so I'm not getting any closer. Sorry. But these hatched areas are raised islands that would likely have some sort of decorative paving on them. That's what the hatching kind of represents. So they'll be driving in between those. So it's a protected space in between islands to direct the traffic into the direction that they should be going, and then they would yield to traffic in the circle. There was a bit of discussion about the traffic. We have done some traffic modeling around here using 2041 forecast year. Which does include all of the forecasted development and changes in the city's general plan. There was a question about whether we've included that development, and the answer is we've included everything that is in the current general plan forecasted to be done by 2041. The traffic flows very well through this intersection, through both intersections. In 2041 with the increased traffic. Overall, it's level of service A, which is technical jargon for flowing very, very freely with very little delay for any vehicles. And then the individual ramps, when you look at them specifically, are also all functioning very well. So that it does function very well, even out to 2041 in that case. The other traffic movements, apologies, Redwood Highway just can make a right like they do today. They kind of go into and then out of the circle very quickly, or they can go straight through and continue southbound on Civic Center, move around to get off the circle into the driveway, or make a U-turn similar to the Civic Center. Off-ramp can turn into the circle as well, and this traffic turns into the circle. And once you're in the circle, you have choices of all your exits, or theoretically drive around in a circle for as long as you want until you find your exit. It won't be kicked out. It is also big enough, just I know somebody's going to ask to accommodate the transit buses that we're designing it for so they can get over to the bus stop. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you answered all of the questions that came on board. Councilmember Yerin-Scolati, I know you had another question.
Yes, thank you. So Matt, actually that was like I believe that Kate Powers was talking about from Manuel Freitas Parkway into the Redwood Highway. And I think her concern, and it's really funny because as I mentioned, I grew up with roundabouts every day, all the time. And it's a small world because this intersection looks very similar to one that I go through, in Madrid. And I think her concern is that as you have the cars, you have all the cars coming from 101 into Manuel Freitas Parkway without stopping there. And then you have the ones that they are going to go from Manuel Freitas into Redwood, right into the roundabout. And you said that you can maybe fit 4 or 5. But if you don't have the intersections that I have seen before, and I'm not an engineer, they have a stop sign right on both sides. Okay, how would I explain this? It has a stop sign. I wish I could move right there. Not right there. On the other one, around there, it will have one. So to make sure that the cars stop if there is a car coming really high speed from the freeway. And then it has another stop sign as you go into the roundabout. Because if it's a functional roundabout in there, it's going to go fast. And some people might forget that they actually have to yield to the people coming from the left. And I am actually, when I was asking before about educating drivers, I can tell you my kids got their driver license. They have no idea how to go into roundabouts. And I know a lot of people, they don't. So it's kind of funny, but I don't know how you can, if you start implementing more roundabouts, how can you teach people yield using your, things that they seem very common sense, but I've seen like huge accidents in roundabouts if people don't know how to use them. So anyway, so those were my 2 comments. One was around if you need to put maybe stop signs in those intersections and how that will affect the traffic. And the other one is educating the community. How do we do that?
Yeah, Councilmember, I'll just jump in. The signage isn't shown here, but there will be yield signs and other traffic signage at each of the intersections of the roundabout to let people know they're entering a roundabout and that they need to yield to the traffic in the circle itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
and what I was mentioning is that in those 2 specific points, I think again, it's just a call for you guys. You are the experts, but you might need a stop sign, not just a yield.
If I may just add, I think Ms. Powers made a valid point about the lack of gap for northbound off-ramp. Right now, there's a very important improvement that's added. Right now, the traffic from Freitas Parkways onto the roundabout does not have enough gaps, and the driver has to guess whether the driver from the opposite direction is making a right turn or continuing through. And the very early separation of those 2 movements will create 50% at least more gaps for that movement. And it's best to keep those movements free-flowing because you really don't want to have any queuing at an intersection like this, because queuing might cause rear-end type crashes. That's it.
Thank you, Rafa. And I wasn't mentioning to put the stop sign coming off 101 into Freitas Parkway. I was mentioning about from Freitas Parkway into the roundabout. Those are one where you're going to the roundabout and the other one as the cars go right there. Yeah, exactly. So they make sure that nobody's coming, fast. Just, some feedback in there. And then I don't know what we can do about education, but I have experience that people don't really know how to use them. And I think if you have something like even at the Civic Center is slower speed than this one. So yeah, just to keep that in mind.
Excellent points. And it's good that's why Caltrans wanted to come here early. So we have a year plus to start having education and conversation so people understandably changed conditions. Yes. So Councilmember Hill, so any additional questions or comments?
Yeah, I think I'm relatively familiar with roundabouts. I've navigated them. I am curious, is there an analogy to this roundabout where on on the west side, we have 2 lanes coming into the roundabout in such close proximity? Is that considered a safe configuration? Is that kind of seen in other places?
I'll jump in on that. Can you guys hear me? I don't know if I'm on mute. I'm good.
Now we can hear you. Yep, go ahead.
Excellent. Yeah, we're considering this an innovative idea. If you have 2 entrances that don't have an exit in between them, and this was done to address some other safety concerns that we had with bringing this lane and this lane together outside of the roundabout, and this concept here is intended to keep those traffic streams separate so that they stay safer. We're eliminating that conflict point by keeping them separated and allowing them to enter the circle separately. When you enter a circle, you're always yielding to the traffic to the left. So they both will act as a normal entry.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember
Hill? Sort of. It's like, I guess there's a part of it that interprets innovative as we don't see this very often. So I guess I'm still curious. Do we see configurations like this in other places, or is this pretty new that we'd be speculating a little bit on its safety?
If I may add, what would really help these 2 movements is the line of sight is very clear. Usually the movements are separated, but the line of sight is not that great. But between those 2 specific movements that are closer than usual, the line of sight and the reaction time, because the left turn traffic from Freitas Parkway has full view of the right turn movement. There are no obstacles in between, and that adds to the safety.
Okay, I'd love to see maybe, I know, I'm glad that we're in early consideration of this. I think I'm imagining a scenario, and I am not a traffic engineer, of course, but as I imagine, say, cars queued up in the lane that's coming from Freitas Parkway, if there's, say, 4 or 5 cars, maybe a couple cars queued up there, they will have more or less the right of way to get into the circle, and I could see cars kind of being deferred as they're turning from the freeway on into the circle. So anyway, I'm just trying to imagine a couple of common scenarios that could happen. But I would love to maybe see a model, as this is kind of considered. It might be helpful to see some modeling. I don't know if that's included in the budget, but I am struck that this does not seem very common.
Any other questions or comments for Caltrans? Yes, Councilmember Kurtz.
This intersection has always been a crazy intersection, as Mayor Cates introduced it. I mean, I know since I've ever lived here for 22 years, this intersection is, I don't know, people see phantom stop signs. There's all sorts of things that happen in this crazy intersection. So I do think this approach is a good alternative to where we are today. I think there's the questions that have been raised, especially from Kate, with the speed of the traffic coming off the freeway and that turn, is whether it's signage or something else to ensure that everyone understands what the level of direction is and that there isn't a stop sign there, that it is a yield going into the roundabout is going to be really important. I would like to go back on the question, and we don't have to solve it now, but I think the question that was raised about during construction, and I know it's far off, but we're asking the bike riders to get north, to go on to Las Colinas, which is going to be the only other road that parallels, if I'm right on this, parallels the freeway to get over to Lucas Valley. So it's quite a different distance, or to get back over to Smith Ranch Road. And so heading over to north to get to Smith Ranch Road, if there's a way of during the construction period to manage that access. Because otherwise we need to figure out, because there's going to have to be definitely a lot of detour signage for bikes, because there isn't another, I guess maybe Los Gamos.
Okay.
So anyway, we could figure out that, but it just in terms of thinking about the Faro through.
Yeah, no, excellent points. And I think Caltrans really showed all the different moving parts of this, and I appreciate the different staging. And it's going to, while it's being built, it is definitely going to be an impediment to have people moving through that area. Hopefully it'll be a short-term pain for really long-term gain. And I'm gratified that you've looked at the numbers going out to traffic of 2040 and that this intersection can handle it. Hopefully by then people will be in fewer cars, not more cars. We'll have less traffic, but okay. So I think we've asked lots of good questions and comments. So unless there's anything else, we will move on to the other agenda item. And this was a presentation. So it wasn't even an agenda item. There was no voting or information. So with that, thank you so much, the team from Caltrans. We appreciate you coming and talking to us about this. Director Guerin, Rafat, thank you. And we know we'll be talking about it again. I think you got a level of interest tonight, and we'll continue to get that information out there. So thank you so much. Thanks, Wajahat, too. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll look into all your questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so we're at agenda item number 7, notice of funding availability for affordable housing. This is a big day, this conversation. We've had this conversation with the prior council, so it's very exciting to have it with new faces. And I see that Jacob Noonan, our new housing program manager, is here, and I shall turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Kate. And good evening, Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Jacob Noonan. I am the city's new housing programs manager. And the City of San Rafael maintains an affordable housing trust fund and periodically releases notices of funding available, also referred to as a NOFA, in order to receive interest in city funding from entities who are either currently in the middle of developing or who are interested in developing affordable housing in San Rafael. I'm pleased to announce that on or shortly after November 5th, 2021, the San Rafael Community Development Department plans to announce a NOFA for $2.5 million for construction and preservation of affordable housing. The funding will be awarded through a competitive process. Qualified responses will be awarded in full or in part, and funding may be awarded to one or more projects. The timeline for the NOFA is that, again, the Community Development Department plans to release the NOFA in early November. Responses will be due shortly after the Thanksgiving holiday or in early December, and awards will be brought to the City Council for approval in late January or early February of 2022. Eligible projects include new construction projects, including the residential portions of mixed use and live-work projects that meet the affordability requirements in the city's guidelines, and acquisition rehabilitation projects, including the conversion of market rate housing or the adaptive reuse of non-residential buildings to affordable housing. The eligible applicants are nonprofit and for-profit developers who will work in partnership with other organizations to complete the affordable housing and provide resident services. And the eligible activities include land acquisition and pre-development activities, construction, and any other activity that helps address the city's affordable housing goals. Now, while the developer team and project requirements will be detailed in the NOFA, the intent of the NOFA is to attract all entities, nonprofit and for-profit, who are interested in receiving funding for the city to develop affordable housing. The responses submitted will need to demonstrate that the sponsor and all members of the team have the capacity to construct and successfully operate the affordable housing and deliver the services to the residents. And the affordable housing will need to meet the goals of the funding and be able to leverage additional philanthropic, county, state, and federal dollars. Now, interested entities will be able to download the application and submit their response online at sanrafaelhousing.org, and city staff will be available to support all entities interested in responding. And as part of the NOFA, we'll continue providing technical support to all the awarded teams as the projects proceed through pre-development and development and into operation. And lastly, entities who are not awarded in this round will be able to utilize staff as a resource for tips and insight for filing successful responses to future NOFAs the city will issue. Now, staff's recommended action is to receive and accept the report, and I am available to answer any questions. And also, if the City Council would like additional information or would like to adjust the NOFA in any way. Back to you, Mayor Kate.
Thank you, Jacob. I was just thinking it's probably your first presentation, but it might be your second one, because I think you were part of another one, like your first week that you were here. So thank you. And I see that Director Giudice is here as well. That was great content and context, but there might be some additional questions. So Vice Mayor is saying no, because we've been part of the conversation. I think that started, trying to think, probably probably 2 years ago, really having these flexible dollars. So, okay, the remaining Councilmember Hill, do you have any questions about this? And then we'll go to the public and come back for comments as well.
No comments.
Okay, or questions. You'll get to do comments later. Okay, Councilmember Urans-Gulati.
No, well, I guess my question is I'm assuming that the nonprofit will have to have a project in mind, right? It cannot, or can they use this funding to, look for properties, like for the study?
Yeah, great question. So what qualifies or is eligible? If you could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. That is a great question. Ideally, they would have a project in mind. The criteria that we would evaluate the dollars against is the best use of the city's resources to achieve the greatest number of housing units for the city. And so, although that is a loose term, I think that most projects would ultimately be fairly defined and created to the point of being able to express or discuss the number of affordable units that would be achieved within a timely manner. And also how the funds the city contributes would then be leveraged to bring in additional resources from the state, the county, the federal government.
Thank you, Jacob. That's actually very helpful. What if you have a piece of land and you just have to do a study to see what's possible? Will that qualify?
Yeah, something like that qualifies under pre-development. So typically in an affordable housing project, the land acquisition is step one. Maybe there's some steps before that, but step one would be the land acquisition. And then the next step is to do your studies, your due diligence, to submit your plans, to start that process, submit to the city, and to get your entitlements, your building permits, so that you're then eligible for state funding through HCD, through the tax credit allocation committee and the tax debt bond committee, and to pull in those tax credits along with other funding sources from the Housing and Community Development Department.
Great, thank you. Yeah, because I'm thinking specifically, and I'll follow up with you, Jacob, but of a project where, sometimes it needs a little bit of environmental review, a piece of land to see if it can be developed or not. So the owner doesn't want to pay for it. The developer doesn't want to pay for it because he doesn't know if they can do it or not. So I was just curious to see, but I'll follow up with you on that one. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Kurtz.
Yeah, thank you. And I asked Jacob and Allie a lot of questions over the weekend, so I appreciate the response. A couple of them I'd like to have you share with the public was how many affordable units did we concede by accepting the in lieu funds? Just so we have that sort of measure in mind as applicants come in for review that we're trying to recapture. And then the second one is if we decide to, can we exceed the 2.5 million?
Sure.
Those two questions would be great.
Sure. Happy to answer those for you, Council Member. So I believe that there was 8.5 units that were paid as in lieu fees as opposed to being received on site. 6 of those were at Lac Lamond and 2.5 were from 350 Marydale. And yes, in fact, if we receive responses that exceed the 2.5 million, and these responses are something that the council would like to award, the council would have the opportunity and the option of doing that.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, based on the questions that we've heard, any projects, and so the RFP goes out, any projects that come back, they will be up to the council to decide and prioritize whether it's a piece of land over rehabilitation of units. I mean, this conversation, this is beginning, I guess is what I'm saying, right, of a future conversation about where we would spend that money, correct? We're not making, yeah.
Yes, that's correct. As designed, staff will receive the responses and we'll evaluate that. I've been discussing this with reps from the staff at the county so that we have a collaborative conversation about projects, and then we would bring forward a recommendation based on criteria, looking at this in terms of how the projects meet the city's goals and what the ultimate achievement of the projects could be, how the projects we think would compete for other funding and other considerations. Ultimately, this is put forward to the council, and the council would be able to have that discussion and choose the projects that they would like to proceed forward with.
Fantastic. Okay, let's open this up to the public for public comment on this item.
To comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. If you're commenting by phone, please press *9. And once you've heard the notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to provide public comment, and then they will be muted once time has elapsed.
Good evening. This is Grace Garrity, a Terra Linda resident again. And I have 2 questions. One is this for both rental and home ownership? And then the second question is, how do developers or other nonprofits know about this? How do you communicate this broadly so that you have really maximized your responses? And there's also, diversity of thought and backgrounds, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Bill Carney again with Sustainable San Rafael. We really welcome the city's issuing of this sizable NOFA and in support of additional affordable housing in the city. But we're a little mystified by what seems to be some limitations in this particular NOFA. And we have a couple of suggestions of a few changes that would benefit a wider number of people in need of affordable housing. So firstly, the funding should not be limited only to developments that include supportive housing, which seems to be stated in the NOFA. So I really want some, that's a question, I guess. Is that limitation true, that you'd have to have an element of supportable housing, which would seem to really narrow the kinds of housing supportable with these very limited funds? So that's our major question. But related to that somewhat also is our feeling is funding should not be limited to public or nonprofit affiliated developers. Important as the nonprofit sector is, of course, the inclusion of for-profit developers would open the potential to support inclusionary housing at greater numbers than required by the city. And that would, of course, increase diversity on site and integration, as we were hearing about earlier this evening. So would love to hear answers to that. And otherwise, just really thank Jacob, welcome, and also the council for your ongoing efforts to revitalize housing and to achieve equity in housing in the city. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? My internet is a little unstable.
No, we can hear you.
I have a question, and I apologize if it's ignorant. I was wondering if ADUs qualify for this kind of funding, because it seems like it's possible that if a region had a lot of ADUs that were possible, that it might be well used on ADUs. So if you could answer that question, thank you.
Thank you. And there's no such thing as a bad question. So we will get to that. We will add that to the list.
Seeing no other hands raised, I'll give everyone a few more seconds. And just reminding everyone, if you're calling in, you can press *9, or if you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature. There's another public comment.
Good evening. This is Sunny Lee again. I have recently, last year, trying to have acquaintance to have low-income housing in San Rafael. I learned quite a bit during that period. A lot of private for-profit buildings may have 2 or 3 units that's a slave to the low-income families, but that's never been able to go back to the market where low-income family could take an advantage. I have noticed it, a lot of actually recently built apartment complexes in San Rafael downtown. Why there's a lot of for lease signs on these buildings and not more people's moving in? Why don't we use this budget to have those units to become, low-income, affordable housing for the people? And also what I learned from this period of helping this acquaintance is that this needs a master's degree to navigate, to jump on to the affordable housing market. With a high school degree or full-time job, you cannot navigate all the paperwork and requirements. And this should be considered. And there should be some agent helping these people out. Thank you.
I see no other hands raised. I'll give a couple seconds.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hi, I think what the previous caller was pointing out is that there's a disparity in terms of commercial leases and commercial space and actual residential space. And so maybe one of the suggestions is that you look at converting some of the unused, because everyone's, not everyone's going to go back into the job market in the way that in the workforce, the way they used to do. So a lot of people are going to be telecommuting and having meetings by Zoom. So you won't need as much office space. So the question is, what do you do with those commercial spaces that aren't being rented? And it is very expensive to convert them into residential use, but I know that you're trying to do that for some, I think you're trying to do that for some of the proposed homeless shelters, and that will be interesting to see. But in general, I think it is important to take a look at what you currently have and what could already be used, because there is an environmental cost to any new building. And we do have a lot of empty space. And there's been, unfortunately, not a lot of common sense in looking at utilizing what we already have. And in part, unfortunately, this is a feature of a real estate bubble where, you know, everybody wants to see values go up all the time. And unfortunately, that means that no one can look at other ideas, like, for example, using eminent domain to make use of underutilized properties that are mostly used as investment properties while people are homeless on the street. Thank you.
Give everyone a few more seconds. I see no hands raised. I see no further public comment. Okay.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment and come back. So the questions that I'd captured, and if I missed any, hopefully Jacob or Director Giudice got them, was a type of units, rental or for homeowners, if that's delineated, NOFA outreach. The NOFA seemed to say it was for permanent supportive housing, if you could speak to that. The inclusion of for-profit developers as part of the applicant pool. How could ADUs qualify? And then finally, would we ever use the money to subsidize either market rate to make it a more affordable? And then I think there was the final question was around conversion. So could someone apply to convert commercial to affordable housing? So yeah, those are the ones I captured. So just have at it. We'll turn it back over to you, and there might be more questions that come out from the council during that.
You bet. You bet. Happy to provide additional information. So yes, this is available for rental and ownership projects. And we will notice this, sending this out to a list of for-profit and nonprofit developers that we know that are in the affordable housing space. We will also make it available on the website, and we'll push it out to interest lists that we have at City Hall. There are in the report, it's identified as ideals for the project. These are just would be more recommended ideals in the NOFA. For instance, a recommended ideal around permanent supportive housing. This is based on the reality of funding at the state and the federal levels, that if we want to pull in funding, this is one of those means that how we do it. It's also a reality of the need, that we do have a need for this form of housing. And in small percentages in projects, I think it's very interesting, and that the council would want to look at that kind of innovative use of mixing populations together. But of course, we could look at projects outside of that. It isn't limited to nonprofit organizations. Certainly, there are several for-profit organizations in the affordable housing space. Thomas Safran, the John Stewart Company, Related Housing are three that I could name off the top of my head. But of course, there's others. And certainly nonprofits that are not in the affordable housing space could apply, but we would want to make sure that they have the capacity to deliver the units and provide the services. ADUs, do they qualify for this type of funding? I think that it would be interesting, certainly, to explore that. However, we would also want to make sure that we're able to produce the housing on scale. I think Councilmember Kurtz, one of her questions was about the number of units that were deferred by the in lieu payments. And so we definitely want to make sure that that's the number that's being achieved, 9 units. I think that we could achieve far more with using these funds coupled with other dollars. I did kind of hear a question about offering rent subsidies in available units versus delivering units. I know that some agencies, Denver, Colorado, for instance, did this a number of years ago with its Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I'm not a great fan of doing that, because you don't actually achieve new affordable units in the long term. You achieve a short-term goal of putting people in your rental supply with the rent subsidies, but that has a time limit on it typically. So it's better to achieve the long-term affordability with your affordable housing dollars. Also, I heard, and I do feel for people out there navigating the search for affordable housing. I agree. Sometimes you do need a master's degree. And that's something that I'm working with the county to solve. We are all within the affordable housing space trying to solve this, is providing the support and resources available to people that are seeking affordable housing so that they're able to achieve that housing goal. Then lastly, converting unused office space into affordable housing. Certainly the conversion of non-residential buildings is something that we could look at in this in this NOFA. And there may be an interesting project out there. So all of those that is available, as well as the development and delivery of new units. I should mention that the state funding sources right now are really focused towards development of new units. And so I think, the most ideal projects out there for other funding that we would be able to leverage are going to be new projects that include new units in them. Those are my thoughts, Mayor.
No, great answers. So Jacob, on that last comment, and I don't know if you can put a number on this, but if the leverage piece is huge. These are fungible dollars, for lack of a more technical term. So if we have $1 in the affordable housing, could we leverage that to get $3 more or $2 more from the state? Can you put a number on like how much more we can attract? I mean, my sense is really amplify that, maybe even $5 more. I don't know. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give us I'll share a great example for the council, and that's a project Vivalon that is coming along. I think that all of us are aware of it. This is a senior housing project. It's a partnership between Eden Housing and Vivalon. It's at a site, the Marin on 3rd. And that project, it will have 67 units. There's a manager's unit and 66 senior units. These are targeted at 60% area median income, which is a very affordable income. That project, the city has at this point $800,000 in it. And then the city has 88,000 CDBG dollars in it. The project cost, it was just awarded tax credits. And so they're moving towards an award date for their tax credits in March. That project right now, it's slated to cost $60 million. So we can look at how the city used its funds to leverage county funds and state tax credits for Eden Housing to bring in a project that is going to cost far more than what the city would be able to achieve just on its trust fund alone.
That's a fantastic, relevant, current example. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'll go through the group. Vice Mayor, additional questions or comments?
Just that I'm really excited to see what comes in the door. So let's let's get this thing published and get the show on the road.
There we go. Yeah. Councilmember Kurtz?
No additional questions. Excited to see what happens.
Thank you. Councilmember Urens-Gulati?
Yeah, no, super exciting. My only comment would be, these are like in lieu fees of some housing that has been developed with no low-income housing. So again, I think it's important in terms of equity, just to see that we are not developing low income in just one community, that we distributed throughout the city. But besides that, I'm super excited to see what's coming, what's going to be happening. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Yes, I echo the sentiment. I am eager to see what comes next. I thought I heard one more question that came through Bill Carney. He did ask the question around, do we have to limit it to nonprofit? I thought I also heard, and I wasn't sure if it was addressed, and I apologize if it was, that he had a question that should funding not be limited to just supportive housing? Is that written into the charter, so to speak, of the trust fund? Or I didn't think it was, but I want to make sure that we're clear about.
I can. Housing. You bet. I can cover those really quickly. No, in the staff report, there was an identification. It was identified as 20%, and I think that that's an ideal. It's based on a need that we know that's out there, and that there's funding available at the state and the federal level. But certainly, we would look at projects outside of that. And then, yes, of course, for-profit and nonprofit developers are eligible to submit responses.
And I just want to add, the goal is to be as broad as possible and to see what comes in, because we really want to make sure we capture the projects that are going to be moving forward. And so we really want to think about, kind of throwing out a really broad net and then evaluating as we receive applications.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just close by saying this conversation, as I said, started years ago as we, as a city, we're trying to figure out how do we get more of these types of units, all types of units into our community. And I'm proud that we have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to attract other dollars. This is a really exciting thing, and it really is us taking concrete actions to have the types of expanded housing options that we want. So very excited. We look forward. I know that timeline. It's, I want to say it's tight, but it means that'll be a nice 2022 conversation to start off. And thank you, Jacob and Director Giudice. And with that, I would, let me see, there's an action on accepting the report. If someone would like to make a motion, reading it into the record, please.
Sure. I'll make a motion to accept the informational report on the status and scope of the City of San Rafael Notice of Funding Availability. CD.
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. The roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Evans Galati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Again, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Allie. And we look forward to the next conversation on this item. So thank you. Okay, the last item of our agenda this evening is approval of the Memorandum of Understanding with SEIU Local 1021 Childcare. I know we have talked about this before. I see that Sylvia Gonzalez has joined us. Nice to see you. I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So good evening, Mayor Kate and council members. Sylvia Gonzalez Shelton, HR Operations Manager. This item is for the second reading of the Successor MOU for SEIU Local 1021 Childcare, which was presented for public comment on October 18th. This agreement is for a 3-year term and includes the value of a 3.5% base wage increase for each year of the contract. There were no public comments at the last meeting, and staff recommends that you approve the Successor MOU with SEIU Local 1021 Childcare.
Thank you. And several years ago, we actually added this step to our approval, which is to have 2 readings, which is why we've heard it before, but we're hearing it again if you're new to watching council and new to watching labor negotiations. So with that, are there any additional questions from my colleagues? Okay, not seeing any, I will ask the city clerk to open it up for public comment on this item.
Queue to comments. Please use you can use the raise hand feature if they're calling in by phone. Please press *6 or *9 to raise your hand, and then the host will invite you to speak. You'll need to press *6. Unmute yourself. I see no hands raised. I see no public comment.
Thank you. I'll close the public comment and bring it back. And unless there are additional comments, and as I mentioned, this is a second reading, and we are delighted and thankful to both staff and the labor units to have had a 3-year term. That is great for all involved, and especially around the all-important child care function that we provide to our community. So unless there are additional comments from my colleagues, I would entertain a motion, of course, reading it into the record as written.
I can make the motion.
Okay.
I move that we adopt a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding pertaining to the compensation and working conditions for SEIU Local 1021 Childcare, November 1st, 2021 through October 31st, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Evans Galati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you again, Sylvia, to you and your team. We are incredibly grateful. I think this is the last of the bargaining units. I think we're all set. So, with that, I don't see anything on the San Rafael Successor Agency, so I'll wait a moment so staff can come and wave goodbye as we see. We know that they're there. Appreciate you staying up with all of us. Everyone stay safe out there. And remember, so the mask policy has changed, but if you're on transit, you still need to wear your mask. So with that, be safe, and this meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.